Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Хто воде всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
О, бля! Игорь!
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 351 of the news. And it's good to see you all again in the chat for another day.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine here on day 351. And funnily enough, y'all may remember that yesterday we were covering the Battle of Volodar and talking about the 155th Naval Infantry Brigade that was currently being used and deployed by the Russian armed forces in the area of the town, attempting to break through the Ukrainian lines and take the small village in the area south of the city of Donetsk. But it turns out today that not only was the 155th Naval Infantry Brigade completely decimated, but the other brigade that was also being used in the area was completely wiped out. And now they've been replaced by conscript units, and this is the reason why the casualty reports have gone from being around 600 to 700 a day to nearly 1,000 Russian soldiers killed per day, is because a lot of those are conscripts getting killed in Volodar. Not even Bakhmut is getting those kinds of numbers up there. It is the insignificant and tiny battle in the area of Volodar that is getting all those losses. But real quick, before we even hop into the news of what's going on in the war in Ukraine, we can see that the nation of Ukraine and the government of Ukraine is trying to ensure that this war can continue to be fought. And we saw that Zelensky has whisked himself away out of Ukraine for the second time ever, and this time not in a visit to the United States. Unfortunately, we don't get to see him again, although I did shoot an email out to him, so keep that in mind. Just in case you're wondering, we did send an email out today. But he actually traveled today to both the United Kingdom and France, and I believe at this moment he may have made it to Germany, if I'm correct, Matthew.
I'm not really sure on the timeline.
I'm not really sure either on where he is right now exactly, but we do know that he has visited the United Kingdom and France today. We didn't really get a lot of news to report for the French. It appears that that meeting, while great, was largely uneventful in terms of important statements being made, but in the United Kingdom, we did see something fairly interesting. The current Prime Minister of the United Kingdom stated that nothing is off the table concerning weapons and future military support for Ukraine. This means that the door has been flung wide open by the United Kingdom, the first nation in the world to say that absolutely everything is possible to be sent to Ukraine. This is something that we can't even assess I guess you could say, the future implications of. Does this mean that the British will start to send tornadoes to Ukraine or Eurofighter Typhoons? We don't really know. Will they be beginning to send even more advanced tanks like the Challenger 2, but maybe even the theater entry standard variants of the Challenger 2? We don't really know. We don't really know what this means, but we do know that according to the Prime Minister, nothing is off the table. That's an incredibly good place to start, and we'll just have to see what nothing is off the table really means, because, and I know some of y'all are like, well, what the hell? It means nothing is off the table. It means that everything's on. But at the same time, that to me seems like it probably isn't true, because I'm sure that the British aren't going to be giving the Ukrainians a Vanguard-class nuclear submarine for the hell of it. So I'm just wondering what nothing is off the table will really mean. What are the limitations to that, and how much weaponry will we see the British provide, and how advanced will it really get before nothing is off the table becomes an anachronism. But still, I'm over the moon that the British are going to be allowing this. And also, this is a fairly interesting meeting today. The bits I got to see from it in between the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and President Zelensky. Moving on into our next...
The UK is really putting their best foot forward. I saw an article a moment ago saying that the Challenger 2 tanks are expected to arrive next month. So they're going to get there pretty soon.
Yeah, and that's also something else what we were actually about to get to. Great thing to segue us in, Matthew, because Zelensky also visited British armored bases where Ukrainian crews were being trained. We can see him standing with the Prime Minister again in front of the Challenger 2. We can see in the next picture, it appears that he has some kind of a tablet in his hand. It may have something like a medal on it, something similar, not exactly sure. And then in the last picture, we could see, I believe these may actually be Ukrainian soldiers under British training that are watching Zelensky take pictures in front of this Challenger 2, and also maybe addressing some questions from the press as well. Incredibly interesting here, and not only is this interesting and neat to see, the United Kingdom did state, like Matthew said, that these Challenger tanks can be expected in Ukraine by the end of the next month, which is way faster than they've been originally saying before on their other timetables, and once again reiterates my point that timetables are not always solid and usually are incredibly flexible. Timetables only give the public a very loose estimate of when things will be occurring or not occurring. And it appears that the British are working at a pace so quickly that they're even starting to break down at an incredible pace the expected delivery rates and speeds of their own Challenger main battle tanks. So incredibly good to hear, and hopefully we'll see these Challenger 2s on the battlefield and representing the United Kingdom. We're now going to be moving on out of Britain and past France and on into Germany real quick, where south of Berlin, we heard that the Germans are providing even more support, this time in the form of Gepards. Gepards are pretty cool, and of course we've seen them in action in Ukraine, and these things whack down drones and also blow pretty much anything away in the sky with ease. They can shoot down Shaheds, they can shoot down Calibers and Iskanders, they can do just about anything. Kind of like a Gepard, well, yeah, I guess a leopard animal in the savannah. But still, you can see that another 2 of them will be provided with more armor, ammo. I'm sorry, for some reason I was going to say armor, more ammo for the Gepards. And then also they'll be providing another 5 border protection vehicles and 8 load handling trucks, which means that they're just supply trucks. Believe it or not, load handling means you can carry supplies, like this one right here.
Oh. Oh, what do you know?
And what do you know? And I got to tell you, Matthew, that thing carries quite a load. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news inside of Germany. And believe it or not, that is all of the international news we've had today. So we're now moving directly into Ukraine and talking about what's been going on here. And before we even get down to Volodar, because Volodar is the focal point of tonight's news, Bakhmut has been superseded in terms of its importance, and I guess you could say the amount of Russian losses that are being received, because Volodar has taken the cake. It appears that there are more losses being taken around this tiny, insignificant town that Volodar is than in the entirety of the Bakhmut battle right now. So we're going to go to the location unknowns and cover some of the interesting clips we saw that we couldn't get a location of, and also the casualty reports immediately, so that way you can get an idea of how bad Volodar is really going and how much it's adding to the casualty rates. Starting off with our first clip, we saw that the Russians are using some kind of a gas. They said they're using a K-51 grenade, which is using a riot control agent. So real quick, let's type in K-51 because I feel like this is some kind of a tear gas, but let's see. Let's see, the is a CS gas, riot control, striker release fuse. So it is pretty much tear gas in the way that the Russians are now dropping onto the Ukrainians. Is this chemical warfare by most people's definition? Maybe. It's a very loose idea that this may be chemical warfare, considering that tear gas is used against citizens in most countries whenever riots occur. You can see that commonly in the United Kingdom, Germany, France, the United States, or anywhere else that riots and protests have been occurring recently. Tear gas is commonly used, so I don't really think this will fall under the U.S. red line umbrella of biological, chemical, or nuclear warfare, but here's the clip of them using it regardless. I mean, you hear the Russians playing the soft opera. I don't even know what that song is, but it's kind of a little annoying, I'm not gonna lie. And I don't think it's copyrighted because it's Russian, so copyrights really aren't respected. But you now see the drone floating off on its way as the calming horror movie opera plays in the background. This is the kind of music you play when the psychotic gardener is chasing you down in the horror movie and you're about to get slaughtered by his long garden shears. This is the music that plays.
This is not the music to represent the Russians at all.
Yeah, this is not good. So we can see them dropping the first tear gas grenade down into the hole. It explodes when you see the gas billowing back out. I feel like we're about to watch The Wicker Man or something here in a minute with this music playing, though. The smoke's now billowing out of the building. I can't even really commentate on this because the music is so psychedelic. Like, for what we're watching, it sounds stupid. It really does. So right now, they're putting a cage, a wicker basket cage on Nicolas Cage's head filled with bees, and he's screaming, "Not the bees! Not the bees!" But anyways, We can see the tear gas still billowing out of the building, trying to get back to serious commentary here. But you see the smoke billowing out of the building, and this is the first videoed evidence of the Russians using any kind of tear gas on the Ukrainian forces. Is that considered chemical warfare? I actually saw someone say that that's a violation of the rules of war. Is tear gas a violation of the Geneva Convention? Well,
I'd be
let's find
shocked
out.
if it was, because we literally use it on our own civilians.
Myth. Tear gas is banned during armed conflict. The United States military consistently took the minority position that the Geneva Protocol does not apply to tear gas. So it appears that the U.S. doesn't view tear gas as a violation of the Geneva Protocol, and it appears that there is no clear rule to allow for a hardcore statement on that, because considering that they're saying that the United States has taken the minority position, shows that there are other countries around the world that think it doesn't fall under the Geneva Convention, and there's other countries that do. So apparently, there is no clear statement as to whether tear gas falls under the use of chemical weapons in the Geneva Convention. And let's see. In 1925, the Geneva Protocol categorized tear gas as a chemical warfare agent and banned its use in war shortly after the First World War. Tear gas was actually used a lot during the First World War, believe it or not. That was most of the gases that were used were something close to tear gas. And a lot of people in the modern day, to give a little bit of context, actually call Winston Churchill a terrible person off of this one basis, that he proposed to gas, I guess you could say, Arab revolutionaries in the Middle East, but that's always taken out of context because they're saying to drop tear gas on them, not mustard gas. But by the 1925 Geneva Protocol, tear gas does fall under chemical warfare. But it appears that the United States doesn't really view it as so. They think that using tear gas is fair, and considering that, you know, I am an American, I come from the United States. If the United States views tear gas as not being chemical warfare, that also means that they're not going to sit there and say the Russians have crossed the red line because we don't view it as chemical warfare. Still, that is kind of messed up considering that these guys don't have gas masks, and if they're in that building, they just have to sit there and now fumigate in tear gas for however long they'll be in that building until they get out. So with that, we're now going to be moving on into the next clip of Location Unknown News, where we can see a captured Russian. And they also captured him with his armored personnel carrier intact.
Край. Кто может узнать по синим губам? Откуда? Город. Город какой? Владивосток. По губам может кто узнает.
And I gotta say, it's great to know that they were able to capture another Russian armored personnel carrier. We usually don't see them in this kind of quality, and especially with this kind of wheel layout, it appears to be a one-wheeled armored personnel carrier. It doesn't appear to have any kind of weaponry, and it also appears that the armor is paper thin. But it's interesting to know that they were able to capture it, and hopefully they'll be able to use this against the Russians fairly soon. Not only that, but it appears that the driver may be Tony, because he is driving blind. It looks like his eyes are covered, much like the soldier that was sitting on the windscreen the first time, and he may run into some difficult road conditions if his situation does not improve. Regardless, they did capture him, and he is from the town of Vladivostok. Where is Vladivostok? Many of you may ask. Great question. Also, that is not DCC Prime's first super chat.
I know it's not. YouTube's making an error.
YouTube's making errors now, but thank you so much, DCC Prime. We will get to that in the next question segment. The Vladivostok is all the way over here. It's north of North Korea, which means that if it was a part of North Korea, it would be also part of North Korea. Believe it or not. Crazy. I know, right? Anyways, he's all the way from here. This is really the only large city that is in the east of Russia, or back in the day, the Soviet Union, and is where Russia's Pacific Fleet is based out of. This is also a cold water port, which means that for several months of the year, it's unusable because the port freezes over, and there's no way to get ships in or out of the port. So, with that, keep that in mind. That's a fun fact about Vladivostok, and crazy to think that he's come all the way from Vladivostok to end up being captured with his armored personnel carrier in the fields of Ukraine. We're now going to be moving on from that because many Russian soldiers, were not as fortunate as him today, and were not able to be captured alive. Most of them ended up not so alive by the end of today. Another 910 Russian soldiers have been killed. Another 15 armored personnel carriers have been destroyed. 5 supply trucks have been destroyed. Oddly enough, the number of supply trucks that are getting destroyed is drastically falling as the weeks go by. We're starting to see that it used to go from around a dozen a day to now we're down to 5, and we're really lucky to see it ever climb above a single-digit number. We also saw that 8 additional tanks were destroyed today, and you have to keep in mind, especially at this point in the war, 15 armored personnel carriers and 8 tanks being destroyed in a single 24-hour period is exorbitantly high. In fact, it's higher than Snoop Dogg. This is unbelievably high, especially for what we see as a normal trend, and so hopefully we'll see that the Ukrainians can continue to hike these numbers up because the Russians continue to lose a massive amount of forces in the Volodar area, mostly armored, and that we're seeing that here in the casualty report. Another 4 artillery systems were destroyed, another 3 drones were destroyed, an aircraft was shot down along with another helicopter, and an anti-aircraft system was also destroyed. But Matthew is about to start
3
drooling.
Bobcats?
3!
3 more Bobcats?
They have destroyed 8 Bobcat skid steers over 48 hours. How do you feel about this, Matthew?
Okay, now jokes aside, I seriously want to know how the Bobcats keep getting destroyed in such decent numbers. I mean, they've lost as many Bobcats today as they've lost drones.
That is a good question, Matthew, and that's one I really don't have an answer to because we have not gotten the video or picture evidence to show where these special equipment vehicles are being destroyed. But it is really nice to know that another 3 of them got knocked out, along with everything else that got destroyed today. Today may have been one of the worst equipment days for the Russian military that we've seen in recent times. In terms of casualties, it's definitely up in the top 10 worst days for the Russian armed forces, and that is coming right off of yesterday, which was the highest number of reported losses, accounted losses, that we had ever seen for the Russian armed forces over a 24-hour period. So this is really something, I've got to say. You don't see this kind of stuff often, and especially...
This is the high price they're willing to pay for Bakhmut. They're going to send everything they've got and basically lose everything they've got.
Nowadays, Matthew, property in Ukraine is not measured by rubles, it's measured by Russians per square foot.
Oh.
And it's
Damn,
becoming
that's
really
cold.
It is, and it's becoming really expensive too, Matthew. Speaking of cold, it looks like the Russians may be having a small heating issue in Russia too, but we haven't been able to get enough confirmation on that to say, but it might be chilly, and I gotta say, the Russians are pretty cold people, so I don't think it'll phase them too much. But anyways, the numbers are exorbitantly high, and we saw over a BTG's worth of forces straight up killed today, and probably another 2 to 3 BTGs have been knocked out due to the wounded alone. This is something we will probably see that continues to get worse, and the numbers continue to rise as the war continues to progress further and further on into its final phases. In fact, based off of how the infantry casualties are climbing, one could assume that we are already entering the end phases of the war. If we were to take a look at trends during the First World War and the Second World War, the drastic spike of losses of men and manpower over the past few months of the war were usually followed immediately by a ceasefire or an unconditional surrender. And going off of that, and seeing that Russian losses are beginning to exponentially climb over the going weeks and days, we may see that the war will end within months. Then again, at the same time, this has never really been a true indicator at this point, and we may just be breaking the surface of how many losses the Russians will be taking on a day-by-day basis over the course of this war. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from the casualty report and moving on to our last bit of location unknown news, where we saw a MiG-29 firing an AGM-88 HARM. And these things do harm these things harm radar installations. They are anti-radar missiles. So here's the video. Also, we got to mute it, but you can see the pretty cool Ukrainian Air Force symbol. You can see the camera looking over the fields of Ukraine as the sun sets. We're looking back over the MiG-29. And you can see that winter camo, Matthew. Notice that winter camo. And we can now see the AGM-88 HARM firing and traveling on its way, and a second one as well. Very cool to see. However, there is a small drawback to the Ukrainian MiG-29s or any other Ukrainian aircraft that they currently have firing the AGM-88 HARMs. They aren't actually built to properly operate them, so they are set into a blind fire mode where they launch them off of their railings under the MiG-29. They travel off into the distance, And if they don't find a radar signature, they don't find one. If they find one, they'll target it and hit it. The chances of that are much less than if the aircraft is actually built for anti-radiation missions, like most Western aircraft are, but it is still great to know that the United States has provided them with that ability and that they're using it whenever possible, and hopefully hitting some Russian radar installations further downrange and destroying a decent amount of the Russian surface-to-air missile capabilities. We're now going to be moving on from this little clip, our last bit of news in the location unknowns, and we're now going to be moving not into the northeast. Many of y'all are very used to us moving into the northeast. We're going to be moving down into Volodar first, and then moving into the northeast and covering all of the news from there and all the way down the front lines into the area of Rykov, skipping over Volodar since we'll have covered it earlier. So, with that, let me get y'all down into the Volodar area, because as y'all can see, there were 5 separate incidents of news in the area of Volodar today. And what's interesting about this is Volodar is not an exceptional area. And let me go down here onto a normal map, and let me show you why. So let me go find it. It's such a small town, it actually doesn't pop up most times. Here we go. So what we're looking at is the 3 cities. These actually used to make up a Ukrainian line of defense earlier on in the war. 2 of these towns have largely been lost to Russian forces at this point, Yakovlivka, Pavlivka, and Volodar. The Russians, at the beginning of the battles months ago, controlled the town of Mikilsky, further down this highway you see here in yellow. They would sweep downwards and south into the Yakovlivka area, overrun Ukrainian units. The Ukrainians would relieve the overrun units. Remember the story of the 5 guys that were inside of the trench. They got relieved. They then withdrew with the rest of the Ukrainian forces, and the Russians took Yakovlivka. A battle then ensued, which was actually quite a long one for Pavlivka, and it would end up with the Russians controlling a majority of the village. But I believe the Ukrainians, if we check, still control a very small part of the town. So let me go down here and check. And it actually appears that the Russians control everything on the south side of Pavlivka, but the Ukrainians control the few industrial buildings on the northern end of the town and still hold those to this day. Volodar is probably the most developed of the villages, the 4 villages that we're seeing here. Yakovlivka, right here you can see it's a bunch of lower density residential buildings, pretty much set up in a grid. Fairly odd when you look at that. It's like, wow, that's literally just a grid in the middle of nowhere. And then you have Pavlivka, once again, less developed, mostly small village houses. And you also have Mikilsky, less developed village houses. Volodar is the exception, as it's made up of mostly, pretty much entirely, apartment buildings, Khrushchevkas, made during the 1950s under Nikita Khrushchev, who was the premier of the Soviet Union at the time and had these constructed all across the Soviet Union. These were incredibly cheap to build. They were not expected to last long. These things were supposed to have been demolished and replaced by permanent housing in 25 years' time after their construction. Nearly 60 years later, they are still standing, and they're still being used by people in all former Soviet republics for housing, and that really tells you how inefficient the Soviet Union really was, considering that that was never the plan, and they're still being used even after the Soviet Union has long since ceased to exist. They're still here. So this town is a little special and exceptional in that way, because due to the high rises, it is a lot more formidable of a town to take than the others. Not only that, it is surrounded by flat fields, so trying to advance on the town is highly difficult. It was very difficult for the Russians to advance onto Yakovlivka and Pavlivka due to the flat terrain in this area. Volodar is the same. You are pretty much engaging, instead of any kind of advanced maneuvers in this area, trying to attempt encirclements. There is no way to attempt an encirclement in all reality, because there's no way to advance to a hill to try and take a vital center or a point. Nothing like that exists around here. It's perfectly flat. And when I say perfectly flat, imagine Kansas. A lot of y'all, even most people who don't live in the United States, know that Kansas is incredibly flat, and pretty much the western side for the most part. It is pretty much like that in Volodar. You can fire as far as you can see. A tank can fire at its maximum range here. Anything can fire at its maximum range here, meaning that armor and anti-tank guided weaponry are going to be the most important determining factors in this battle. Infantry practically have no role, because they would be destroyed long before they even got close to firing distance with another infantry unit. And so the Russians, having seen this and being very simple-minded, decided that the best thing to do would be to start pushing armored units across these flat fields directly into the Volodar area, and hopefully by that point they'll be able to create a safer area for the APCs and also by and large trucks to move up and then drop off infantry into Volodar to begin the actual battle of Volodar from apartment building to apartment building until they take the entire town. So that's kind of the lay of the land down here that we've seen. And not only that, there were 2 large divisions that were involved in this area. And let me make sure I get the names of these correct. The Russian 40th and the 155th Naval Infantry Brigades were the ones that were involved in this Battle of Volodar for pretty much the majority of this year and also a month or 2 last year during December and November. The 155th Naval Infantry Brigade is also one of Russia's most advanced and highly lauded units in their entirety of the Naval Infantry Armed Forces. They're practically considered the level of the VDV or close to Spetsnaz level in levels of training and also the availability of advanced equipment they have. You could view them in a way to a comparison of the Rangers here in the United States, of course not comparable on a side-by-side level, but to the Russians, they view the 155th Naval Infantry as the Rangers, or maybe even, I would say, for the British, the 1st Paras from the Second World War. So they're what you would call a crack unit. So now that we've given this lay of the land and the story that we're about to start unraveling today and what's happened, let's go through some polls, because the story y'all are about to see is absolutely unbelievable, and like yesterday, the losses are racking up to a speed that we really can't even count them. So, with that, let's go through some polls, and then we'll get back to this, and we'll start talking about the Battle of Volodar in particular, and the massive Russian losses that have been taken today. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so we do have 3 polls to cover for our first question segment, but real quick, I think we have to make a correction. It looks like CS tear gas is apparently categorized as a banned chemical agent in warfare. From what I'm looking at here, it must have been an incorrect statement from that source we looked at first.
Interesting. Then that means that the Russians technically are using chemical warfare against the Ukrainians at this point, and we actually got video footage to confirm it. So now it will be up to the United States whether we view it, because we're the only one who's laid out a red line clearly on that sort of thing about chemical warfare. It'll be up to us whether we view it as chemical warfare or not. I don't know if the United States actually uses tear gas in war situations. I don't really know of any instances that I can think of off the top of my head where they have, but we'll just have to see what the government thinks about that and whether they find that to be a serious violation of that red line or not. So with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well and corrected that here on stream. Thank you everyone for sharing that information with us so that way Matthew could pull it up and correct that. And with that, let's get on into the polls.
All right, and staying on that same topic, we have a poll on that. Do you believe that the use of CS tear gas is a war crime? It looks like 20% said yes, it is. 14% said unsure. 31% said, it's unethical but not a war crime. And 36% said no, it is not. Now, apparently it is, from what I see from various sources here. But I will have to admit, that's kind of weird because we do gas our own soldiers in training. We also use the gas on civilians in the United States for riot control. So for it to be categorized as a heinous act, as in a war crime, that seems like a little bit of a stretch to me. But apparently, technically it is. So Enforcer, what are your thoughts?
I'm gonna have to be honest with you. I'm never into giving the Russians a break, and I usually want to give them a hard time on everything. But I just don't really see that as chemical warfare, because considering that we'll pop a tear gas grenade into any crowd of protesters, rioters, whatever the situation is, considering that police will more than happily toss one of those grenades into a crowd at any given moment anywhere in the world, kind of makes me a little question a little whether that really is a war crime or not, because if it was a war crime, wouldn't it also be a crime against humanity to use that against people? And it doesn't appear to be the case. So I'm going to have to be honest. I don't think it is a war crime, and I think that while it's kind of a cheap shot to use it, you can't really sit there and go, oh, that's a war crime. You know, they're committing an atrocity on that. There's many atrocities that the Russians commit. They commit hundreds of them a day, but I just don't think that is one of them. Honestly, if the Ukrainians did that, I wouldn't turn a blind eye to it, because there's nothing wrong with it, in my opinion. It would just be what it is. They would be using tear gas, and it doesn't really seem to be that big of an issue to me. So with that, that's my opinion. And also, I see some people saying got tear gassed at a concert at the Cotton Bowl. But let's see.
I'm sure a lot of people in the chat's been tear gassed. I saw someone who was in the military talking about their experience going through the gas chamber during basic. I've heard some horror stories from that, but just flap your arms, it'll be okay.
Flap your arms, flap your arms. But anyways, I'm just gonna be honest with you all. Some of y'all are saying it is a war crime. I just can't. In this instance, I can't see it because it's just used so much everywhere. It's used a lot here in the United States domestically against normal people. So I don't know how, in a military sense, that would be considered a war crime because, you know, that it's weird. It's almost hypocritical because if there's a riot behind the lines in an occupied area and the Russians use tear gas on Ukrainian citizens, that's not going to be considered anything. It's not going to be considered a crime against humanity or a violation of their rights. It'll just be what it is. But if you use it against soldiers, then it's classified as a war crime. That kind of seems odd because usually the rules of what you can do to civilians is a lot more strict than what you can do against armed combatants, and that seems to be flipping it the other way around. So with that, I hope that addresses the poll. Once again, that's my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. Apparently, on the books, it is a war crime to use it. But at the same time, in a modern world where it's used against everyone all the time, I don't really know where it could be considered that anymore. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. Also, a lot of y'all are saying military-grade tear gas is a lot worse. And I wouldn't really know. I actually didn't know that there was a difference in tear gases. So
Yeah, I
they
thought
were all the
CS
same.
was CS. Maybe it's in higher concentrations, the chemical.
Maybe. I'm not really sure. I would have to do a little bit more research on that off stream. But if it appears that a lot of y'all are actually saying it's different. We'll look into that, but for now, honestly, I'm going to have to remain undecided due to that fact, because I don't know if it's more potent than the normal version we see being used against protesters and rioters or not. So I'm going to remain undecided on that one, and I hope we address that fairly well. So let's get on into the next one.
All right, and the next poll that we have says, do you believe the UK's lofty and generous statements of support for Ukraine will actually be carried out? It looks like 70% said yes, they will follow through, 8% said unsure, 17% said they will partially deliver, and 5% said no, talk is cheap and action is real. And on this one, I've got to say, just from what we've seen from various different countries, I think they will partially deliver, but I doubt they'll follow through all the way, because what was the exact words he used? They'll literally send anything or nothing's off the table?
Nothing is off the table. That's what he said.
Yeah, that to me is almost too vague. It sounds promising, but I doubt it'll end up turning out to be what we think it's going to be. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'm going to have to be honest. It's a great thing to say, and we already have heard, according to reports from the British, that the Prime Minister has requested the Ministry of Defense to look into aircraft that may be available to send to Ukraine. So it appears that they're actually backing that up by maybe being the first country that'll officially send the Ukrainians aircraft and pass that final Russian red line and see if it's real or not. But at this moment, we don't know what that's going to come back with, because he may have said that publicly, and then behind doors they'll say, make sure that we say we have no aircraft available, and then they come back and say we have nothing available to give right now, and that's the end of it. So we don't really know at this point. But it is nice to hear that. It's just that it's going to be worthless if it isn't really backed up by providing anything extra that they haven't given. So with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well. Oh my god, man. Both of these testicles came in here. Oh my god, I cannot believe someone just made that account after last night. I love that. That's amazing.
Nice.
Thank you for that. That's hilarious. But we'll have to wait and see, getting back to this poll, if that really meant nothing is off the table or not. So with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well. We can see Malcolm coming in with a statement. I can't sadly comment on that one because that would get into politics, especially for European viewers, because that was a big deal. But with that, we are on, I believe, to our last poll.
Yes, this will be our last poll, and let me flip over there to it real quick. Let's see here. Oops, flipped to the wrong one. All right, so it says Zelensky took his second foreign diplomacy trip since the beginning of the war, and was that a surprise to you? It looks like 69%. Nice. Said no, I knew he would travel again, while 22% said yes, I am surprised to hear it, and 9% said unsure. I'll have to admit, I'm in the minority. I was kind of surprised to hear that he had traveled again. I thought maybe that one trip to the U.S. to speak to Congress would be his only one before the war concluded, but apparently not. And he's still going around asking for help, which is good for Ukraine. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I don't I wasn't that surprised by it, honestly. I knew it was coming because once he did it the first time, obviously I was thinking there would be second ones. Well, it's not obvious, you know, it was obvious to me, may not be obvious to others. The poll shows that. But I largely thought it would happen again. He would make visits to other countries. And I believe back when he addressed Congress here in the United States, I said, you know, he'll probably end up going to the United Kingdom, France. Who knows? I said something like, who knows? But it was floating around at the time that he may do it again. Well, at least in my head. And I wasn't that surprised by it, actually. So with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well. And now we are on into the questions.
All right. So first up from our super chats, we have that $100 donation from DCC Prime 1, who's a longtime channel legend, and it's definitely not the first time supporting, but thank you very much once again for that very, very generous amount of support. And DCC says, keep up the good work, and thank you for all you're doing on the channel. It is very appreciated. And Slava Ukraine, and Hiram Slava.
And thank you so much for the huge support, DCC Prime, and thank you for enjoying the work we do. I try my best to make sure that this channel is entertaining and also informative, and I know, well, more so informative over entertaining, but we always want the entertaining point in part to be there, because, you know, we actually had last night an entire Ukrainian unit let us know that they're watching our channel almost every night, and that is a huge point why, real quick to explain this, why we keep it entertaining, because you can always be doom and gloom and you can cry about everything on earth, but there are people out there fighting and dying on the front lines right now for Ukraine that are watching this show, and I'm sure they don't want to go through a huddle together cry fest whenever they watch this. They want to have some laughs and have a moment where they can look at the whole thing and get a quick little laugh out of it before they have to go back out there into the seriousness of the whole ordeal that we're covering. And so I gotta thank you so much for enjoying the channel and everything that we do. We try and make it the best we can, and I'm glad that we definitely were able to meet the mark for you, DCC Prime. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. Thank you for helping this channel to keep on running, and also Slava Ukraini. And with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you so much once again, DCC Prime, an absolute channel legend. I believe he's actually an old guard.
I believe he is. He's been around longer than I have, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he is an old guard when I think about it, because I think I remember seeing you around on day 4, but I, for some reason, can't really remember for sure. Anyways, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Praise Adonai, who puts in a very generous $50 super chat. And thank you, Adonai, for that. I was about to butcher that. Come on, man.
Come on.
But anyways, is Turkey able to continue helping Ukraine? Great back to after credit card hacked. Yeehaw and Slav Ukraine. Hold on, let me see if I can see what that meant.
Great to be back after their credit card was hacked.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that dot messed me up. That was just a dot for Ukraine. But Adonai, thank you very much for the support. And also, let me do it justice. Yeehaw!
And also, thank you so much, Praise Adonai, for the support. Welcome back. I hate to hear that your credit card was hacked. I actually, to tell you all a funny story, I was actually scared that my credit card was lost one time, and I sat there and called the bank immediately because I keep everything in the same place at all times. You can ask Matthew. Everything is arranged in the pockets of my pants at all times in the exact same way, so I know everything is right there on me. There's nothing that can be left behind. One day, my credit card was not there. I freaked out. I called my bank, well, actually the credit card company, and I told them, the car's lost, deactivated, and I was driving when I found this out and this happened. And so I was at a red light, and I sat there, I was like, man, I really need some Mentos gum, because I have those little Mentos chewy gum things. I opened up the center console, and for some reason I had put it in there on top of the gum. So I literally just gotten done with the call with the bank, and if I had known it was there, I wouldn't have called them. But it's good to know that that you were able to fix that. Luckily, I didn't have to go through that bad of an occasion, but still, I completely understand where you're coming from. I think everyone's had a moment like that in their life. Haven't you, Matthew, or are you built different?
I honestly don't have moments like that. You're talking about losing things?
Kind of, yeah, for the large part, you know, like you lost your credit, well, you think you lost a credit card or something like that.
I have everything so, perfectly organized. Like I'm a nut when it comes to organization. I don't think I've ever lost anything. And I don't say that lightly because I take organization very seriously, as you know.
And of course, Matthew is built different. But to answer your question about is Turkey able to continue to support Ukraine, they are entirely able to continue to support Ukraine. The earthquake in Gaziantep really has no massive impact on the country at large because Turkey is divided into two. Many of y'all are living in countries where the nation is divided north to south. Britain is divided north to south. There's a totally different social and economic motive in the north of the United Kingdom than there is in the southern area. In the United States, it's fairly similar, but we also have an east to west divide as well. In Germany and Turkey, they have the exact same divide, an east versus west divide. Even after Germany was unified in 1989, the east and west divide still exists to this day, and East Germany is far poorer and far worse off than their West German counterparts, even up till the present day. And you can see that with how the German demographics break down. In Turkey, there's a similar situation. Everything west of Ankara kind of shaped in a crescent moon. So watch my mouse cursor, kind of like this, is all wealthy. And this is where a lot of the industrial base of Turkey exists, is west of Ankara. This is where they make a lot of their money. This is where a lot of their goods are produced. A lot of the stuff that they export is made here. And a lot of pretty much Turkish economic action happens all in the western area. Here in the east, you have what they call the agricultural and rural lands of Turkey. These really don't have a lot of economic activity going on, but they do support a lot of Turkish agriculture. And so when you look at Turkey and whenever disasters occur here, you've got to ask, is it occurring east of Ankara or west of Ankara? If it's west of Ankara, it's directly affecting their economy and also their ability to carry out things like support to Ukraine. If it's happening in the east of the country, it's largely not affecting much of anything beyond their agricultural sector and the people that live there, and also the town of Batman, because that's a thing. So I hope that answers the question fairly well, Praise Adonai. I just realized there is a town literally called Batman in the middle of Turkey. Does this have anything? What is this named after the Batman? Batman is a city and capital of Batman district in Batman province. Why is it called Batman?
Is there a district called Gotham?
Let's see here. So it's populated by the Kurdish people. So I'm sure that there's a lot of chaos that goes on out there in between the Kurds and the Turks because they're still at war with each other. But why? The Badi Rahman oil field. Maybe that's why it's called. Wait a minute, hang on. Until the 1950s, Batman was a village. The village was renamed Batman after the river namesake received a city status and became a district center. So it appears that it wasn't actually named after Batman, but it's named Batman. And there's a picture of Batman, by the way. It's actually really pretty out there.
Yeah, it is actually. Dang, Batman's living it up.
Yeah, Batman's living it up out here. Dang. But anyways, this is the weirdest thing. Like, it's not even called after Batman, but it's named Batman. Anyways, we're going to move on from this because that's just baffling me. Anyways, it won't really be affecting a lot of Turkey's, I guess you could say, external focuses, except for the people who live here in the East. So with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Praise Adonai. I hope we addressed all parts of that super chat fairly well. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are moving on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the Volodar area and the unbelievable losses that have been sustained there.
All right, and our very last one of the first segment goes to Colleen Emsley, who puts in a $40 donation. And Colleen, thank you very much for that. And well, hold on a minute. Hold on. Let me grab this real quick. I'm getting so far behind. The chat is moving so fast tonight. Also, Colleen says, not much new up here in Calling Lake. Lots of ice fishing for walleye. Strange ice heaves and cracks today, but no quakes since last 5.9 lately. Thanks, guys, for your great continued coverage of this horrific war. 72 windows makes for a great view. Oh, my goodness. And 72 windows makes for a really bad energy bill, I'm sure.
And also a huge house. I mean, I don't even know where on the
Really?
you fit 72 windows on a house. But still, thank you so much once again for the support. And let me go to Calling Lake. It's one of them up here, I think. No, wait a minute, hang on. No, it's over in Alberta. Yeah, here we go. You know, how in the world do I remember this stuff? Like, how in the world do I remember where this one lake is? There's thousands of lakes in Alberta, and I just know where Calling Lake is. Anyways, I do thank you so much for the support, Colleen, and it's great to hear that things are going swimmingly, pun intended, because, you know, Calling Lake, up there in Calling Lake, because it's always good to know that our viewers are in a pretty good condition. I don't know why I copied that. Strange ice heaves and cracks today. We don't deal with ice at all, so, like, the idea of ice heaves and cracks is really foreign to us here in the South, and how that would pertain to anything, but that is really interesting to hear that there has been strange ones. I don't know what those will look like, but I would always be interested to learn. And also, thank you so much, Colleen, once again, for being our in-house helicopter pilot. In case if y'all are new, Colleen is actually a helicopter, well, a former helicopter pilot, I believe, maybe currently still flying them. I can't really remember if they're a retired helicopter pilot or if they're currently flying helicopters, but they've flown a load of them. If you can think of one, they've probably flown it. And so, thank you so much once again, Colleen, for being an old guard of this channel, helping us to keep this thing running, and also enjoying our continued coverage. We try our best to make sure that this is the best it can be in terms of news coverage live, and I'm glad that you enjoy it. And also, I hope you enjoy looking out of the 72 windows. I don't know how you're doing that all at one time, but I'm not going to ask, because I feel like you may be an omnipotent, there we go, omnipotent helicopter pilot. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the last question. Thank you all so much once again for the support, and I hope we answered all of y'all's fairly well. And once again, also to reiterate this, just in case you are new, you do not have to send in a super chat for us to address a question. If you want to support this channel, considering that we run no ads and the only way we can support this channel is through a super chat, you can support us. And if you do, we will make sure to recognize you and read you off. We do that every single night, and we never miss a single person. If you want to ask a question, though, you can ask one in the live chat. Just make sure to tag @EnforcerMatt or @Enforcer, and Matthew will be able to see it. He'll grab it, and we'll probably get to it later on in the stream, but we only answer questions that have @Enforcer or @EnforcerMatt on them, because that's the only way Matthew can see them to collect them. So with that, we're now moving on from the question segment and on into the area of Volodar, and starting off lightly and building our way on up into the massive news from Volodar, we'll be taking a look at this reporter that was showing what Volodar looked like today. And so, here's the video.
Знаходимося зараз в місті Вугледар Донецької області, де тривають бої з російськими окупантами. Ви бачите, як виглядає місто, ви бачите, як працює російська артилерія.
We see them looking at some of the buildings that have been damaged by Russian artillery
Зараз
fire.
Тривають бої, авіація працює, артилерія. Ось так Вугледар перетворився на Бахмут.
You hear the artillery fire still occurring in the
Хтось
distance.
проживав ось тут на вулиці Трифоновій, так? А тепер це все руїна. Ось такий знак у Вугледарі ще зберігся, розбитий, як і все місто. Ось так, такі машинки по всьому місту.
Вугледар. 30.01. Доброго дня. А чого ви не виселяєтесь?
Ви мене чуєте, коли я вас питаю чи ні?
А тут
Мінус, щойно не чув, вже маленько раз.
Interesting response from that citizen. He's now moving on further down the way. City, of course, has practically been abandoned at this point. Almost no one's here except for a few people.
Ворог намагається захопити місто, щоб просунутися далі. Ну, що можу сказати? ЗСУ – це красунчики. За словами очевидців, так, російські окупанти наступали 2 ротами танків, БМП, танки елітні Т-80. З них майже нічого не лишилося. Наша артилерія, наше...
And we've already seen those pictures and proof of those two companies getting wiped out yesterday.
Ці елітні екіпажі, елітні танки.
We now see a little bit of additional footage showing a little push that happened today when you see the infantry getting out of the BMPs and one of them was immediately hit. Hey Matthew, I bet you see what I'm seeing in the chat. How do you want to bet how quickly that'll turn south and it'll go AWOL?
Oh. I'll say 65% chance of bot.
I'll say a 70% chance you're probably about to get them in maybe the next comment or two that they make in the live chat. We can now see the APCs sitting there in the middle of the field. One tank's been knocked out, another APC has been knocked out. It appears that some of the other vehicles are being abandoned. Another BMP was just hit and wiped out. A second, we'll wait for it to come back on. And there we go. We are back on. So now that we're back on, sorry about that, everyone. I don't know why the lag just occurred. Matthew, me didn't even know it was coming, and there wasn't even an indication that it was coming. So sorry about that. But moving on into some of our first bits of news today, we saw some Russians trying to advance onto Volodar, and they didn't get a good result. It's the same video that we saw just a minute ago, but it is a little bit longer, and we can of course see our boys in Ukraine are in the Discord call. Let's watch what happened.
Вот почему мы долбоёбы. Вот почему мы русские долбоёбы.
We can see the BMPs moving forward, of course, as usual.
Давай, роби кладбище, нахуй.
We can hear the excited Ukrainian giving the commentary, and he is excited. They're blowing them away, of course.
Ай, блядь. Всі в кучу, сука, нахуй. Блядь, якби в мене було стільки техніки, я би, сука, вже ту Росію раком би поставив, блядь. Зараз буде ще.
Dude, these guys are excited as hell. They're like, yeah, get them blown away. That's the end of the clip. But there was another look at the footage that we saw of that Russian unit getting obliterated. And it's always nice to hear the voices of the operators behind the screen that are watching this occur, because it's always good to hear the excitement in their voice and know that they are incredibly happy doing their job defending their nation and helping to give the Russians as difficult a time as possible and making sure that the Tempur-Pedic company stays in business in Russia, as many Russians will be sleeping for quite a long time and require beds. We're now going to be moving on from this little clip and on into the next one in the area where we saw a Russian tank exploding. And the turret toss was sublime. Someone... No, we don't want 80s techno. No, thank you. Someone play Ave Maria. Ave Maria. But anyways, the tank blew up. We're waiting for the turret. We're looking for... Oh, there it is! Oh my god, dude. That thing was in the cloud up here. And it was coming... Oh my gosh.
Let's see it again. I didn't get to see it.
Alright, so I'll point it out to you as soon as I can see it. Right there, that's the turret.
Oh.
And it's coming back down. Oh my gosh.
Oh, dang.
10 out of 10 right there. A 10 out of 10 turret toss. That is one of the highest we've seen.
I'll give it a 9 out of 10 because it did swerve off course a little bit. It went off to the right.
Oh, come on, man. You don't be so
9.5. 9.5.
I'm giving it a 10. That was an excellent turret toss. We're getting a lot of good ones lately. The Ukrainians are really spoiling us for choice, and I'm sure they're going to get the gold in the Olympics this year against the Russians, because if the Russians are going to be in the Olympics, they need to add the turret toss as a sport. All right? It's either we boycott the thing and try and get the Russians out of the Olympics, or we force the Olympics to add turret tosses to their sports venue, and then we see how far the Ukrainians can fling Russian turrets, because it looks like they would win gold hands down, quite easily as a matter of fact. We're now going to be moving on to our next clip from the area, where we also saw a Russian push get destroyed. When you see the Russians moving forward in the snow, we can see one of them is dragging a part of their tank back, and we see some Russians following it. We can see a large Russian infantry group gathering up behind this BMP-2. We see this BMP-3 moving back. And the BMP just got hit. Pieces go flying everywhere. And it appears that some of the Russians just got pasted onto the floor. Now the BMP crew that is still alive has gotten out of the BMP and is now running off. when you see another artillery shell land, and for some reason it's not really crossing these guys' minds behind the BMP-2 to split up and run. And also another thing, why were they pushing in the wide open instead of push in the bush over here at the tree line? They were in the wide open where they could easily be seen. Of course they'd be seen near the tree line, but it would take a little more time, maybe a few more seconds to find them and start calling in the artillery. That was just stupid on their end. When you see that the Russians just never learn, and they're still sitting around that BMP-2, when you see that one tank back there is smoking, the one that was pulling back, but you see the BMP-3 has been completely destroyed. When you see that they're around the back of the BMP-2, trying to pull out the washing machine, sadly it's square and the hole's round, but they're still going to try and pull it out. The artillery is still coming down. And I gotta tell y'all, those Russians trying to pull out that washing machine, I guess you could say they have a weak pull-out game. No comment from Matthew. Matthew said no comment.
That was an interesting one. That went pretty far.
Well, it's true. We now see the Russian main battle tank backing into the BMP. The BMP is now also backing up. And now they're getting into a nice, very good grouping. Everyone's in the same spot. The BMP-2, the infantry, the tank. And they're slowly moving back. They're now moving back to the BMP-3 that's been destroyed. The BMP stopped. It almost made the T-80 run into it. They're still backing up. When you see one Russian crawling on the ground, it looks like he's not having a good day of it. No one was really helping him out much either. We now see that the T-80 ran into the BMP, because the BMP keeps on backing up erratically. The artillery is still coming down. It looks like it's missing for a bit, and it's giving the Russians a little bit of time to react. The T-80 is now moving up again. Now the infantry are running away. The BMP-2 is sitting still by the destroyed BMP-3. The T-80 is wildly looking around. It looks like they don't even know where to shoot, and there really is nothing to shoot. They're now turning their back in the direction of where they were heading. They're now moving back towards the BMP. We can now see the BMP moving up again. It looks like the tank was firing its machine gun right there. The infantry are still running away, some of them hobbling, some of them crawling, but they are getting out of there. And as the Russians would say, the officers ran the quickest. Because for some reason they can tell the officers from the rest of them. The artillery is still coming down. We can see some smoke coming from a shot just a little off screen. And now the Russian tank has picked up smoking. It looks like it has met our chain smoker, and it also looks like the crew is abandoning the tank. They are abandoning the tank. When did it get hit? I never saw that tank get hit. It just started smoking. I can't go back and watch the whole film. It's too long for that. I'm trying to sit here and think, when did it take enough damage for the engine to get damaged like that? I don't even have an idea. Apparently, the best thing I can assume is that that tank just had an engine breakdown in the middle of all of this. The transmission just disintegrated, and now it's smoking and burning because the engine's about to explode, so they just bailed out and started running. No way. That's all it takes? That's all it takes? They didn't even get hit, and they just caught on fire, and they ran away. Oh my god. That's something. That really
is it true this is a minefield, by the way?
No, this isn't a minefield. No, this was all artillery that was exploding around them. There was no mines in the area. And it looks like Thomas Kreuger came up with the best explanation. He said it damaged colliding with the BMP. Maybe, but if the engine bay of the T-80 is that weak, going up to it with a sledgehammer and hitting it could disable the entire tank. Maybe it can, I don't know. But that is wild to see that thing just break down like that in the middle of the field and they abandoned it. So with that's the end of that clip. Pretty impressive to see. And we're now going to be moving on to the whopping news today that I actually found from a Twitter source. And since we're using a Twitter source and someone who added in their own opinion, and this was very well backed up and informed, so I was reporting it here as news. A Twitter account by the name of Tatarigami UA posted this information. It's a multi-thread Twitter post. about what has happened to the 40th Infantry Brigade and the 155th Naval Infantry Brigades that were involved in the pushes on Volodar. So let's read these off bit by bit. And I did as much looking as I can, as much information finding as I can, and this all appears to be incredibly true based off of video and picture evidence that we've been getting from the area, and also how over time the 155th has started to largely fade away from information circles, and they have now become a very small reported on unit. The first time we've ever gotten any news recently about the 155th was yesterday when we watched the T-80 hit the BMPs. So here we go. About a week ago, I wrote that the enemy moved a brigade from the 3rd Army Corps. Given that the enemy revealed itself, I think it's time to add more details for the public. 2 out of 4. Based on OSINT, it's likely that on the 6th of February, the enemy decided to utilize the so-called Volunteer Battalion Alga, which is part of the 72nd Brigade from the 3rd Army Corps. Do not confuse the Ukrainian 72nd Brigade, confirming the information which I published recently. And here's that information right here. This is about the 72nd Brigade moving forward. So we're now going to close that out and move on down here. It was formed in Tatarstan and predominantly, albeit entirely, comprised of ethnic Volga Tatars, which is a smaller ethnic group in the eastern area of Russia. Thanks to 666 Manser, the information has some open source evidence, and hopefully we'll observe even more obituaries in Tatarstan soon. And we can see right here, the Olga units talking about being moved up. And as we read right here, it says, let me read it here. It says Bataliona Olga Zverda Nashi. So that's something about our Serdans Garon Pobeda Biedet Sa Nami. So that's something like victory for our nation. Povbin. And I know I'm probably butchering it. Sorry, everyone. Pomnin, Svok, let's see, Skormin. I don't know what that part means, but this is pretty much largely comparing that they've now been moved into the area of Volodar. So now moving on from that, and getting to the last part, it is another indicator that both the 155th and 40th Brigades are no longer capable to perform significant assaults, which is why the enemy is using volunteer battalions and also of ethnic origin immobilized to retain some pressure, and the results are predictably disastrous. And we have to say that this take on what's going on in this area has to largely be true. We're starting to see that armor losses are being taken at an unbelievable measure, and not only that, infantry losses have skyrocketed in this incredibly small but somewhat heated battle in the Volodar area, and that's where most of the additional losses we've been seeing are coming from in the casualty report. Hundreds of extra soldiers are being killed per day, and that's not in the Bakhmut area, and that's in the Volodar area, and we can only attribute that to a lower quality training of troops, to the loss of vehicles and manpower as well. So it appears that Tatarigami, in my opinion, has largely hit this dead on, and they have noted that the 155th and 40th have practically been destroyed in the area, and they're now moving in the 72nd, or Olga, to try and replace the ailing units that are practically destroyed and replenish the forces or continue on a small amount of pressure to make sure that the front can keep on churning forward, at least at some pace, so that way the political requirements of eventually taking Volodar are not failed. So with that, I hope that addresses the Volodar area fairly well, and we'll see how this battle continues to progress, considering that the Ukrainians control the, I guess you could say, most formidable town of the chain in the area. And let me go back up here. And once again, notice, all smaller villages with one-story buildings. Volodar is the only one that has multi-story Khrushchevka apartment blocks, which pretty much makes this, on the flat plains of this area, a castle for the Ukrainians to defend from, although still very difficult to get to for them, and very difficult for the Russians to get to as well. We're now going to be moving on from the Volodar area in that battle and on into the northeastern area of the country, because we have gotten a small amount of news today. And of course, we have to do the frontline analysis. Over the past 24 hours, you wouldn't believe it. I don't believe it. No frontline movement again. Nothing changes up here anymore. But as we move on into the area of Kuzmivka, we did see a Russian record his last message while holding a hand grenade. You can kind of infer what's going to be happening from the whole hand grenade thing.
Всем привет. Опа, попали под жестокий пиздарез. Размотало нас, пиздец.
Да, блядь, вот. Подмоги нахуй нихуя нет. Ничего.
You hear a round flying over. He freaks out for a second. Artillery shell explodes right on top of him.
Не вытаскивает никто. Вот он аргумент.
And then he whips out the grenade, the RDG-5, like he's got some kind of like Easter egg. He's like, look, it's a grenade. It's a grenade. It's probably the only weapon he's seen the entire time he's been at the front. He's got no AK, no ammo. He just had this one grenade the whole time, and now he's like, look, Easter egg.
Давайте, я вас всех люблю. Попали жестко, блядь.
With that, that's the end of the video, but there you have it, a little bit of a look in the Kuzmivka area and what's been going on there. It doesn't look like the Russians are having that fun of a time. So we're now going to be moving on from the area of Kuzmivka and further down the line into the area of Krasnoyarchinske, where we saw a Russian tank get hit today by Ukrainian anti-tank fire. You see the tank firing as the country music plays in the background, almost making Sam Elliott come out of me, but he didn't. You can see the tank backing up. It's still backing up. It's hit that reverse, and it's not stopping. It's going about 5 miles per hour in reverse, maybe 8 at the fastest. See it continuing to move back. Some smoke's coming off the left side of the screen. And it fires again. And wait for it. Wait for it. It's still moving back. And goal. The Ukrainians hit the tank, smoke is billowing off of it, and the tank's been knocked out. We haven't seen a fire to confirm it was knocked out, but it most likely was knocked out due to the black smoke coming out of it. And so with that, we're going to be moving on into our next clip out of the northeastern area, most likely. I can't really remember if there is one in between there and here, but seeing Russian tanks explode and seeing Russians in not-so-good situations has brought out the bots tonight. I just noticed one, Matthew, and it went, are you, and then you got it immediately. It'll be coming back with an alternate account and going, we're not stopping, and then they'll get bullied so much that they'll stop.
I've been getting the bots so fast tonight, I've had people asking me to leave them around for some time so they can bully them some more.
Well, I mean, like we're all about making it as fun as possible for the Lee Spring Army. Do y'all want the bots to stick around for just a little so y'all can bully them? If y'all do,
I've actually asked them already, and they want me to leave the fun one. So if it looks like a bot that we can have some fun with, it's going to stay for some while. We're going to knock it around a little bit, and spread our weights around and pump iron for 12 hours straight.
So you're telling me you want 3 rooms?
No, we don't want you right here. You sound a little crazy.
No, man, we don't want you around here. You don't really sound sane. You need to get out of here. But anyways, we're going to be moving on from the northeastern area, and we're now moving on into Bakhmut, and oddly enough, Luhansk. Y'all know that Luhansk and Bakhmut are 2 separate cities, miles away from each other, almost 80 miles apart. But you know what's odd is that today, a guy living in Luhansk said something about the Battle of Bakhmut that I found incredibly interesting. Because he shouldn't be saying this kind of stuff, because the Russians usually throw guys like him out of a window. But for some reason, this pro-Russian man by the name of Gherkin has said that the Ukrainians are still well in control of Bakhmut, and in his opinion, they're going to hold it for a while, still. And I found this to be quite a shock, because this is going completely against incredibly optimistic people even in the West, who think that the battle has done incredibly well like me, but it will be inevitable the Ukrainian forces withdraw. Gherkin doesn't seem to believe that, and based off of what we saw today, here's his statement. The situation in the Volotar-Svatove front. Despite the increased victorious yelling of internet propaganda, the situation on the Donetsk front has not changed significantly over the past 2 days. Advancing takes place only in Bakhmut. It's alleged that the village of Krasnoura in the northeastern elevated part of the city is fully under the control of Wagner. That is not true. And also to the southwest of the indicated settlement. In the area east of the village of Stepochki, where the advanced units of the PMC managed to take under fire control of a small section of the Kramatorsk-Bakhmut highway, the the Stopochki Ivanovsky section. That's also not true. They've created a no man's land, and it appears the Ukrainians have made a defensive line on the highway, but they haven't actually moved onto it and taken control of it. In the city itself, there are advances in urban development. However, most of Bakhmut is still controlled by the Ukrainian armed forces, and from what we can tell on Deep State UA, almost all of Bakhmut's controlled by the Ukrainian forces. Really, the city is controlled by the Ukrainian forces. But it does seem, and let me check this real quick, the Russians do control a sizable amount of the buildings up here, and they have been able to eke a couple of city blocks down here as well, but the advance that they're making is still incredibly slow. It's almost as if they're hardly making any progress still. So moving on from that, there is no operational encirclement of Bakhmut yet, since the enemy has the ability to transfer reserves and carry out supplying through and to the north of the settlement, Chasiv Yar, with a strong fortified area. I've got to be honest with y'all, I don't see a supply line there, because he says to the north of Chasiv Yar, there is no sizable road north of Chasiv Yar. There is only the M03 and the T0504. There is probably a smaller access road that could make it into Bakhmut, but we can't see it on this map, and I haven't seen it on any other map, so I don't know if Gherkin has seen something on their end that indicates that, but I haven't seen a road. Both sides suffer high losses in men and equipment. That part isn't really true, because from what we know, while the Ukrainians are taking higher casualties here than normal, they aren't even close to what the Russians are taking. The final outcome of the battle depends on the availability and injection of reserves from both sides. First of all, we are talking about the armed forces of Ukraine and how ready they are to continue the meat grinder on their part. For the Wagner Command and the Russian armed forces, the capture of Bakhmut is of a fundamental importance, so the battle will continue on our side until victory or until complete exhaustion of forces. It seems that Bakhmut can be completely captured in the period from several days to the end of the month. In the direction of Bakhmut and Seversk, a gradual, slow advance, pushing out the units of the armed forces of Ukraine in the area of Lysychansk. The enemy is not retreating yet, although he has left a number of advanced tactical positions in the area of the settlement Bilourivka. We also saw in the area of Bilourivka here in the north, right around here, they actually were able to push the Russians a little bit back yesterday by about several hundred yards, so that's a good sign. Near Orlivka, attempts were made by units of the former LDPR Corps to advance in the area of the New York settlement. In general, the attacks were not successful. We didn't even report on them because nothing really happened. Fighting continues near Adivka. Despite sensitive losses on both sides, no advance of our troops was noted, and that's true, we haven't seen any movement. In Marinka, no change. A sluggish frontal grind as in all other areas, and that's true as well. They're losing guys in Marinka like no other. Based on the analysis of incoming fragmentary information, the latest assault on Volodar was repelled with heavy losses for the units of the Russian armed forces participating in it, which we have video evidence to confirm, which is not surprising since only cretins can be attacking head-on for many months in the same place, heavily fortified and extremely inconvenient for the attackers. I'm honest, I've got to be honest with y'all, I'm completely baffled how he hasn't fallen out of a window yet saying this kind of stuff, being in a pro-Russian controlled area. That is crazy to think he has not fallen out of a window and died yet. It makes me wonder if he's just like his accounts are being controlled by someone else and they're just saying whatever. But he's actually said stuff like this on video too. But it seems that he's not really that optimistic about the Bakhmut area, and he thinks that the Ukrainians will still control it for quite some time. So with that, we're now going to get into the Battle of Bakhmut, and I've also updated the front lines on our map today to best represent it as best as possible what we're seeing. And over the past 24 hours, it looks like a little bit of extra no man's land was made here, but beyond that, nothing sizable or of note. Also notice, interestingly enough, I've noticed, Maddie, that over time, the Battle of Bakhmut around the chicken tender actually evolved the exact way we thought it would, with the Russians controlling the chicken tender and providing covering fire for the Russians to, for the forces to move further down the highway, and they did exactly that. So really,
I have to admit, I'm kind of shocked because I knew, we both actually said it, when they were taking Soledar, that they were trying to swoop around to the right to get a flank on Bakhmut. I have to admit, I'm kind of shocked they were able to pull it off. Obviously, it's coming at huge losses for the Russians, but it looks like it'll probably end up proving successful in this one instance.
Yeah, well, it took them months to do this. It's taken them 5 months over the Second Battle of Bakhmut to pull off what would take the United States maybe 2 weeks to do. In a similar situation, maybe a week. And I think that while it is interesting to see that they are finally able to create what you can physically tell is an attempt at an encirclement, it's taken so long that at this point, it may as well have been inevitable because they've had 5 months to try and pull this off, and they've only gotten to creating a half encirclement and not a complete encirclement. So
Here's another question. Like this may seem like a little goofy, but why don't they just go from Soledar like straight forward? Why do they feel the need to swing back to go to Bakhmut instead of moving straight forward?
So if they move straight, that's actually a really good question, Matthew. They move straight forward into the area, like, are you talking about an area like Vasyukivka right here? And
Yeah, like just hard push straight forward toward, I can't even pronounce those, but straightforward.
Nikiforivka, Raya Oleksandrivka, Fedorivka, Druha, Peruvilia. The problem is that they can't advance farther because there's no way to supply those forces well. Like if you're saying just advance down this little valley, there's a small country road here, and for the amount of forces that they would probably need to try and push that, they wouldn't be able to supply them. So due to that limitation, the forces there would be incredibly small, and they'd be very easy to counter for the Ukrainians that would still control and operate off of the highway. They could just swat them around, beat them back, flat out destroy them. And so that's why the Russians are swinging back, because all of these major offensives and Russian movements require some kind of ability to supply their forces. And we already know that with large control of the highways behind the lines, they are barely able to supply their forces. And so highways are a necessity and a must-have for the Russians to weigh the majority of their forces against the Ukrainians at any given moment, like they are in Bakhmut. And notice, everything in this battle is connected to this one highway coming from Popasna, and also the highway coming further down from the area of Orlivka. That's where all their supplies are coming from to keep this battle going. And all of these, I guess you could say all of the forces that you see here in the semi-encirclement are being supplied off that highway. So to continue to advance forward into an area like, say, if they wanted to push further down towards Kramatorsk and Slavyansk, they would have to operate off of those highways to make sure that they could support the forces they need with the supply lines they have. So that's why they can't just push like straight through the fields, because there's no way to really supply a large force going off of that direction.
Interesting. So it's pretty much solely logistics issues.
Yeah, it's solely a logistical issue. You always have to put the logistics before everything else. That really dictates what you're able to do and how battles turn out, is making sure that your army has enough bullets, beans, and ammo. Oh, well, bullets, beans, and guns to keep on moving around. And so that's the main determining factor.
And they also need brains.
Yeah.
That's another factor you forgot.
They're always lacking on that, though. We may as well not even put that out as a requirement. They've never had them. But anyways, moving into the northern area of the battlefield, we saw a Tor system get destroyed today by Ukrainian artillery. Right there. Poof. And now it's...
Jaga, jaga.
Jaga, jaga. Hey, wait a minute. Real quick, though. Medyar's back. Bleh. So let's watch Medyar.
Oh.
He is going to get him good. So let's watch the clip.
Дочки першого хробака. Швиденько всі скердуються. Не те, щоб тут комфортно, ні. Їм треба от зайняти до цієї вулиці перехід, щоб потім, там, відстрілявшись, спробувати відтиснути наших воїнів. Ну, визначиться, де вони. І відтиснути їх.
When you see the car antenna
прийшовши на
swishing
наступну.
around and explaining
Типу,
what's going
а
on
за
here. We can see
ними
a
на
smoking
цю
house.
вулицю зайдуть наступні.
It must be the house of a pothead,
штурмовики.
because that thing has
Типу,
got smoke
так,
coming
від
out of it like
вулиці
no
до
other.
вулиці, от, вони рухаються. Така у них концепція. У нас своя концепція, то не чекаємо ні хвилини, працюємо. Але по-дорослому. 7 хробаків в цій хаті, коригують птахи Мадяра, працює доблесно, не скажу хто. Наразі не може. Але побачите. 3, 2, 1. Джага-джага!
Hey, another house.
Hey.
Hey, let's go.
Добре.
Igor.
Igor!
Кінці. Повторочка. Ба-ба!
We can see a second round hitting the building. It appears that they're trying to take out the Russians that are holed up inside of it.
Дивимося уповільнено і рухаємося бігом далі. Ба-ба!
We can see a third round hit the side of the building. It looks like you may have actually been able to get through the wall and down into the basement.
Але треба допрацювати. Так? Ну, щоб на вірочку, як то кажуть. Все ж таки хробаків 7, а вулиця вон де яка. Вузенька. Працюємо далі. Поки руху не спостерігаємо. Я так думаю, храбаки в ахуї. Якщо ще хтось живий. І хоч хробаки
We can now
може
see
і
the
в
footage
ахуї,
just cut to
але ми
another
точно не
location, and it
в
looks like
городі.
they're trying to hit this
О, тотальна
rubble
зачистка.
foundation. I don't really know what it
Цього
is.
хробачого у околицях Бахмута. Джага-джага! І це, я вам скажу, не найкращий ракурс. Але повторочка. Бабаф! Добре, але треба роздивитися покраще. Там є нюанси. А вони є зазвичайно завжди. Але добре.
We now see them hitting more targets. It looks like they're trying to hit that same spot.
От зараз такий оча. Оба! Такий типу лотус. Що я може
That was
просто
quite a shot right there, I'd have to say.
затумився трохи. Та базарю, що попало. Але дивимося з другої сторони, там цікавіше. Ось ті самі залишки.
Now I'm going to be
Хати.
skipping forward for a second, past this part. We can see the same house that we saw at the beginning of the film getting hit again.
Вона вже у нас була в полях. Дивіться, уважно. Зараз спробую то все
See them looking at the house. We're going to
показати.
skip forward again.
Вибігають.
And we can see a shell landing right there.
Whoa.
Wow, we can actually see that one come in. Did you see that?
Wait, let's see it.
Watch.
От він. Зараз буде вибух.
And here it comes. Right there. You can
Whoa.
see the shell actually
Dang.
fly in. That was wild.
Oh
Oh, no. Oh, no. Matthew. The
Is
Russians
he making
fly.
that sound of? Oh, wait a minute. Is he? Oh.
Watch the car
oh.
antenna. That's a Russian.
I didn't see anything.
Oh, I did.
Let me say it again. I didn't see anything.
I didn't see nothing. Now I get what you're saying, Matthew. I didn't see a thing.
Ось він. І дивіться, як зараз полетить. Чуш!
And now you put it on replay like it's the
Не
NFL.
знаю. Мало би бути видно. Мені видно чітко. І то не може не тішити. Добрі, з цією хатою добрі. Десь пролетимо.
Man,
Жодного.
what a shot. What a
сили
shot.
там шансів нема. Скільки трупів ми там навіть побачили. Вибачте, тушок. Тушок. Звісно, тушок. Бада-бум!
We can see another shell hitting the house.
Ну і...
And the house is smoking good.
Джага-джага!
Another one. And that's the end of the video. But of course, Madiar is still out there calling in that artillery and making sure the Russians pay a pretty high price. We're now moving on to the next bit of news from the Bakhmut area, where we also saw a 30mm hitting a house. And I thought this was a pretty funny video because this Ukrainian guy is just in the house chilling while this BMP outside is just slaughtering this little entrenchment. This guy's just in the house, man. He's like, I'm in grandma's house. Nice day. Looks out the window. BMP is just shredding some Russians outside. He's like, that's nice. You know, grandmother's house has really gotten into a bad neighborhood these days. That's the end of the video, but pretty cool to see. We're now moving on to the next clip, where we also saw a Mista being destroyed near Soledar as well. When you see the Mista right there, you can hear the copyrighted music playing. You can see it, them sitting there and looking at it. And, oh, jaga jaga. We now see a mushroom cloud rising from the Mista.
Why does this look like a dirt road in Alabama?
I don't know. That's a good question. And we can also see a D-20 artillery piece there, and it looks like the artillery hit it dead on, causing an ammo detonation and destroying the piece as well. Astral said orbital strike. Yeah, this is what you get in Call of Duty when you get the 20 kills or whatever it is. I forgot, because I've never played Call of Duty. But still, they're roasting that D-20 fairly nice.
You play Call of Duty, you're not going to get away with that.
Dude, I don't... Dude, okay, hang on. I do not play Call of Duty. I play Hell Let
used to.
Loose. Dude, like what? Like when I was like 12? That was like 8 years ago.
Yeah, we used to play split screen COD Ghost all the
Yeah,
time.
but I'm talking about now. I'm like, I don't remember that stuff from 8 years ago. I play Hell Let Loose, Postscriptum. Let's see. I used to play Squad a little. Ronnie Fit was playing Squad. That was pretty cool to watch today. I actually hopped on the stream. I can't really think of the others right now, but not COD. I don't play COD or Battlefield. I generally avoid those two. But anyways, we're now moving on from that clip. Pretty crazy to see. And we're now going to be moving on into the center of the battlefield of Bakhmut, where we also saw the Ukrainian border guards hitting the Russians with some mortars today. And call these guys a construction crew because they're really laying on the mortar. We're going to mute it real quick. And you see the Russians high-stepping down the street, probably because they're drunk, and the mortar shells are hitting. The Russians are panicking, and they're turning around and they're running. Call him out. Call him out.
Call him out. He used to play Ghosts. Call him out.
Call him out. Call him out. And we see the Russians crawling across the street. We see them being dragged across the street. Oh, no. Did you see that?
I actually did not.
I can't go back and show that. He had a dismemberment.
Oh.
He was dragging him, and you know Woody from Toy Story when his arm fell off in Toy Story 2? That's kind of what happened right there. That was a little wild. That's the end of the clip.
Are you telling me that this object was being held by the other arm?
What do you mean?
Well, I'm trying not to be graphic.
He was dragging him by the arm, and the arm went pop like a Lego piece, and it disconnected. His arm came off. He was pulling him, and he popped his arm off.
Good.
Okay, whatever. You're not getting it. So we're moving on into the next bit of Bakhmut news from the center, where we saw a picture of some Ukrainian tanks behind the lines. We can see here, all of them have the little neat crosses on them. Some of them have numbers. We can actually see 378 and 374 right here. Pretty nice. So there's a couple of tanks in between those. But pretty neat to see, and also great to know that the Ukrainians have armor behind the lines supporting their forces and helping them to also inflict more losses onto the Russians. We're now moving on out of the area of the northern part of the front and down into the south, where we saw a Russian assault occurring on a Ukrainian trench, and the Ukrainian was trying to take care of the Russians, but his AK kept jamming, and his dispensing of medicine couldn't occur. We can hear the assault going on. You see them trying to load magazines in the middle of the firefight.
Парни, экономим патроны, экономим патроны. Парни, дивлюсь теплак. Хорош! Давай!
You see him firing,
Хорош.
getting a grenade ready.
Да, да, да.
He pulls the pin. Well, he's preparing to pull the pin. You hear the rounds popping off the ground right in front of him.
Братан, БК нема? Пизда. Економимо, економимо. У мене последня граната. Братан, ми їх мочканули, дохуїще.
You see him joking around a little bit.
Підараси! Пизда. Тупо метрів 8 от нас, я їбало, алло. Надеюсь, нам дадут отдых, ебать. Хотя бы один. Сука, нашел. Я нашел цинк. Ебать, я нашел цинк. Да, братан, похуй, что ты пробовал.
I see him messing with some stuff on his AK, trying to unjam it. Look at that. It's that AK reliability that everyone always lauds. It can run in the mud, and then it gets mud in it, and it doesn't run. What do you know? It's like a crappy gun. You know, it's a good thing that the Ukrainians are replacing their AKs with M4s, because the AKs just are not that great. You know, milled is always better than stamped, and every AK is stamped. There's very few that are milled, and almost every M4 is milled and not stamped, so they're just a better quality. You see him trying to fire it over the trench. It jams again. We can see him reloading it. See him firing over the top.
Клин, сука, дай сучку, сучку дай.
Looks like it may have jammed again. He's now grabbing another AK to try and unjam his with. He's now unjammed it.
Блять, Клин. Калашу пизда. Пойдем лутанем, короче. Хуйня, все, у нас тупо 2 калаша рабочих осталось, брат. Мы на войне. Надо было сюда РПГ брать. Я бы с РПГ уебал, пидора, на!
Now see him firing over the trench again.
Ебать, увидел. Пидора увидел, тупо на меня палил, ебать. А сидим, поиграем в жизнь. Нема ответка.
I don't even know what that was.
Бать, тупо меня перед головой пролетело.
A rocket flew over the head? I can't really tell.
Ух ты, блядь, иди на. Батько должен наградиться мною. Должен наградиться. О, давай, блядь, ну братик, сука. Надеюсь, меня отпустят, пока помыться, нахуй. Такая же самая хуйня. Кричат, ебать. Ебануться, нахуй, панам. Короче, на 3 гранатах они подорвались.
You see him trying to figure out why the second AK is jammed. The firefight's still going on.
Вот это веселуха.
And this guy is laughing about the poor quality of the AKs. He's now unjamming another one.
Ой, Дослав, Дослав!
You hear a bullet fly right over his head.
Я прикрою, братан, ну все будет четко. На нахуй.
Something exploded in front of him.
Браво, нет! Уебаны нахуй, сосед хуй!
This guy's really getting into it. I mean, like, everything he's doing, he's like screaming it. He's like laughing and joking, and then he's screaming about the AK sucking. And then you see one guy's actually field tripping it and trying to clean it.
Диви, як роз'їбало. Диви, тупо роз'їбало, нахуй. Баний баху. Как же ты мне, блядь, рад. Дай ты бежишь, долбоёб. Ты сейчас прибежишь, нахуй. Аля, работаем!
He's screaming again.
Не журитесь! Пидорам сосать! Пацаны! РПГ можно? Да. Я их похуярю там кабачками.
And that's the end of the clip. But it looks like the AKs are not that great of a functioning gun. And so, to all of the die-hard AK fans, why is it not working? Why is it jamming so much? Why does it suck? Why does it not have an accurate grouping? There's nothing good about an AK. Like, you know, you can say, you can give this to a little guy in Somalia and he can take a cargo ship with it. But that is only if it doesn't get dirt in it. It's a huge myth that those things can run through anything. That's not true because there's so many open holes on it. Like, watch this. Watch this. AK-74. Let me show you all this. Hopefully there's a picture of it with the safety down. Let's see. Wow, everyone takes pictures of them with the safety up. It's almost like everyone has, like, gun safety or something. Dang.
You know, the AK might be inaccurate and also just overall kind of a crappy gun, but the ability to pump them out so fast is probably the only thing that's redeeming of the entire gun.
Yeah, but, you know, is that a quantity approach or a quality approach? Because we know that quality is a better approach than quantity.
Well, that's actually the question that's on the poll right now, and we'll have to see. But I you know, if you can put more guns in the hands of more people, if you have the people available, that's kind of the debate. Is that better, or is it better to have just a handful of, you know, more quality guns for quality soldiers?
I'm gonna have to be. Well, I'm not gonna address that poll yet. But look at this. They actually took the dust cover off of this AK. So, you know, look at that and tell me that if someone ran through the mud without a dust cover on an AK, would that thing still run? Probably not. Probably not at all. And let's go to another one. I've got to find one where they just have the safety off on it, because here we go. Look at that giant hole. Every time you disengage the safety on an AK, there is a clear open spot where dirt and mud and everything can fly in and just gunk up everything and make it not function. The ARs, or the M4s, are different. Let me show you why. The M4. Look! No giant open holes. The only time there will ever be an open hole on this thing is when you're firing it and the bolt is moved backwards and is ejecting a cartridge. That is the only time that mud and other kinds of particulates can get inside that gun and start messing it up. Now, I know that they're still finicky. Every gun's finicky after a while, and stuff will eventually get in there, especially if stuff's just floating around in the air. But still, the M4 was not only more accurate and more effective than the AK, it is also more reliable than the AK, and that is just a fact. So with that, We are going to
Wait a minute, is that Daniel Defense rails on the front of that M4 right there?
maybe.
It
Depends on
looks
who's
like
at.
the same type.
Matthew's about
That's
to
pretty
go-
clean looking.
Matthew's about to go on the hunt for this rifle in particular. He's going to go and try and find it. Matthew's a huge fan of the Daniel Defense Company and the rifles they make. Honestly, I still want one of those Colt AR M16 style rifle things. Like this right here. I still want one of those, but they're so expensive, and I don't really get the point of spending like $2,100 for pretty much an AR with some different kind of furniture on it, because that wouldn't make much sense. But anyways, before we get down that rabbit hole, because I know we're about to go down a really long and lengthy one here, we're going to be moving on from this video and that AK, and now moving on out of the Bakhmut area and down on into the southern front, around Avdiivka, where we saw an OSA get destroyed today in Donetsk. Man, the music is just hip-hopping. But you see the OSA right there, the artillery hits it, it's gone. LZ X-Ray 67 said, Eugene Stoner was an absolute genius. I'm going to agree with you. He was a genius, but I still can't get over the last name. I just find it to be funny, but he was a really smart guy with his design. I don't know why the video's lagging so badly, but you can see the OSA in there burning. It has been destroyed at this point.
That might be a good idea for a video I'm seeing in the chat, by the way. Well, that's right. YouTube won't like us doing that, building a gun.
Yeah, they wouldn't. That would get us copyright striked. Well, not copyright, community guideline striked most likely, or have us shadow banned. So sadly, we can't do that. We're also going to cut this video out right here because we've already seen what's important. The OSA has been destroyed, it's on fire, and also this video is lagging heavily. So we're now going to be moving on into Donetsk because the people of the DPR are actually getting somewhat of a square deal. Instead of getting a cake or water park tickets for their dead soldiers, they're getting these absolutely gaudy fur coats, which I find to be somewhat hilarious considering how terrible they look. So here's the video. I call this the French and Indian War because these guys are pelted up.
Man, they're giving out furs.
Man, they're giving out that mink. They're like, thank you, our sons died and we got mink.
Guess it's better than water park tickets.
I guess, but I still don't think it's worth losing your son. But I guess these people think it is.
Все, это от русского актива нашей столицы. Вот, не забывают, хоть они там, как говорится, наш тыл. Вот, помогают все в эти 9 лет нам. И спасибо им огромное. Да. Вот такие моменты ощущаю, что мы одна семья.
Our sons died so we can have drip. And so with that, we're now moving on out of the Donetsk area in this silliness. And we're now going to be moving out because there's nothing else to report from here. There's been no frontline activity. And we're now moving into the area of Velika Novosilka, where we saw a T-62 was captured today by the Ukrainian Armed Forces. Take a look. It's a T-62, блядь. It's not even a T-62M. It's a T-62A. It doesn't even have armor. Pitiful, unexcusable, terrible. We're now moving on from Velika Novosilka and further down the line into Rykov, where we also saw a Russian do the stupidest thing. A kamikaze drone had fallen into the thicket, and so this Russian decided to give it the old tap with a stick trick and see if it will blow up. And it did, and it killed him.
Дебил, сука, ебаный.
Here he comes with the stick.
Ты чё, хуёво, тебе сказали, что ли? Залезь нахуй обратно,
and it blows up. And now we can see it blowing up right over there, and that Russian literally killed himself with a kamikaze drone. That's the end of the clip. And I gotta say, play stupid games, win stupid prizes, and this guy is the winner of the Darwin Awards. We're now moving on to the other bit of news where we saw volunteers digging in the Zaporizhia area and getting ready for the potential offensive that may be coming from this direction.
Миномет. Ну, він приходить. Ворог у нас знаходиться з цієї сторони. Там ще перед нами стоїть теж наші побратими. А наша рота тут вона як резервна. Тобто в случаї прориву десь ми або затикаємо цей прорив собою, або хлопцям на поміч видвигаємося. Зараз якось більш-менш спокійно, зараз готуються, я думаю, до чогось більш масштабного. Тому що ми самі, в нас же є опит, що коли затіше, потім після затіші обов'язково якась буря буде. Це 100%. Воно не може так бути, що буде завжди спокійно. І поки ось є така можливість, є таке спокійствие, зараз максимально окапуємося. Тому що вже коли почнеться війна, вже тут з лопати ти не побігаєш. Все вручну копалось. Тут нічого не було, нічого накопаного. Як морози були, штик-два десь тяжко копається, потім земля все одно не настільки промерша була, вже копається більш-менш нормально. Плюс ми вже ж на опиті, вже є інструмент, кірки, лопати, заточені, все. Хлопці вже з лопатою на тим в мене. В цьому тут нема. Там старших, менших, всі працюють, тому що це наша безпека, це наше життя. Я думаю, днів 5 вже закінчимо. Теж тут обійшлімося, зробимо. Вже буде тут буржуйка стоять, тепленько. Будуть хлопці працювати тут. А от наш архітектор, це він все тут розмітив, все тут виміряв. Знає вже наперед, в якому бліндажі скільки людей буде, який треба метраж копати, все.
З февраля місяця, 25 числа февраля, прийшов добровольцем в воєнкомат і вже після з воєнкомату мене направили вже в 56-ту бригаду, яка знаходилась у нас в даний момент тоді в Запорожжі. І з 15 мая я вже служив в 56-й бригаді. Під Пісками ми були Мар'їнка, там таке Красногоровка. Основний наш рубіж називався Рубін, де в основному ми проходили дуже жорстокі столкновення з нашим противником, суперником. Держали оборону, захищали Україну.
Настрій взагалі який?
Робочий, бойовий, настрой на позитив, що в цьому бліндажі будуть хлопці себе чувствувати в теплі і в безпечності, спокійно віддихати, кушати, общатися з другими хлопцями, і ділитися своїми сімейними тайнами, скажімо так. Хто скільки хоче дітей ще.
So with that's the end of the video, but giving you a look at the Ukrainian volunteers that are digging the trenches in the south and preparing for anything that may be coming their way. And so with that, we've now covered all of the news from north to south, east to west, and it's time to move up to Kyiv to cover the speech today for President Zelensky, which was made in the Parliament building. And this is quite lengthy, so we're probably only going to show about 6 minutes of the start, and then we'll move on into the question segment and round out the news. And so here's the beginning.
Slava Ukraina. Mr. President, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you. The people of the United Kingdom and their honorable representatives, all the people of England and Scotland, of Wales and Northern Ireland, of all the lands which have been home to brave souls since Europe came into existence. I have come here and stand before you on behalf of the brave, on behalf of our warriors who are now in the trenches under enemy artillery fire, on behalf of our air gunners and every defender of the sky who protects Ukraine against enemy aircrafts and missiles, on behalf of our tank men who fight to restore our Ukrainian borders, on behalf of our conscripts who are being trained now, including here in Britain. Thank you, Britain. And who will be then deployed to the front line, skilled, equipped, and eager to win. On behalf of every father and every mother who are waiting for their brave sons and brave daughters back home from the war. Mr. Speaker, you may, I think, well remember as roughly more than 2 years ago, we met with you here in Parliament. Great honor was for me. And I remember we enjoyed tea. We talked, of course, talked a lot about our people and about our countries, about the British and Ukrainian political traditions. Mr. Prime Minister Rishi, when we had our meeting earlier today, and I said to you that I will tell a story in my address to the Parliament, and a story about my feelings on my first visit to London as President in autumn 2020. The program was packed. Royal Highnesses William and Catherine, and Buckingham Palace, and aircraft carrier of the Royal Navy, the Westminster, of course, Downing Street, and of course, the war rooms. And there is an armchair in the war room, the famous Churchill's armchair, and a guide smiled and offered me to sit down on this armchair from which war orders had been given. And he asked me, how did I feel? And I said that I certainly felt something. But it is only now that I know what the feeling was. And all Ukrainians know it perfectly well too. It is the feeling of how bravery takes you through the most unimaginable hardships to finally reward you with victory. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your bravery. Thank you very much from all of us. Yes, please. That is for you. All applause for you.
Oh my goodness.
Has stood with Kyiv since day one. From the first seconds and minutes of the full-scale war, Great Britain, you extended your helping hand when the world had not yet come to understand how to react. Boris, you got others united when it seemed absolutely impossible. Thank you.
And so with that, unfortunately, we've passed the 6-minute mark right here, so we're gonna have to pause.
Look at that hair.
But
oh my God.
if you want to watch the rest of this, you can find it on the president's website. We actually didn't put a link to this one tonight because it was so lengthy that it wasn't really a normal address that we would put down in the news. But if you do want to watch it, you can go to the president of Ukraine's website and make sure to find it there. But with that, we have rounded out the news segment of tonight's stream, and we're now about to be moving on into our question segment, answering all of our polls, all of the super chats, and as many live chats as we can. And so if you were here for the news alone, I thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button on the way out, and also subscribe if you haven't already, because this stream runs 6 days a week, except for Mondays, and you can always count on us to find your news. And so with that, let's get on into the polls.
All right, so we have 5 polls left to address during our final question segment. And up first, we have a pretty good question. Have you ever been tear gassed? It looks like 25% said yes during basic training, 8% said yes by law enforcement, and 66% said no, I have never been tear gassed. So surprisingly, higher numbers than I thought it would be said yes. The 8% that said by law enforcement, I wonder why, but anyways, Enforcer, what say you?
I've never been tear gassed, so I would have to fall in the category of no. But I am very curious about the ones who were tear gassed by law enforcement. Why? But with that, we're on to the next one. And thank y'all once again for sharing y'all's input on whether y'all been gassed or not.
All right.
that actually sounded wrong.
But,
yeah, that sounded wrong now that I think about it, but we'll move on with it.
All right. And also, if you're leaving for the night, I see a bunch of people saying it. Good night to you, and we'll see you tomorrow. But for the rest of you, let's get to the next poll, which says reports indicated that the U.S. ruled out sending F-16s to Ukraine, but now it's being walked back. What are your thoughts?
Oh,
it looks like 57% said they were never off the table, 10% said unsure, 16% said USA is realizing it was a mistake to do so, and 16% said cannot predict based on statements. And on this one, I'm going to have to say that these days we really can't predict what any government's going to do based on their statements because it doesn't seem like anybody's word means anything anymore. People just say what's convenient in the moment. So I'm going to go with the 16%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'll also go with the 16% because the United States says stuff like it's definitive, like, Ukraine can't support Abrams. All of us in our all-knowing knowledge here in the Pentagon say that the U.S. can never possibly send Abrams to Ukraine with a solid conscience. Okay, we changed our mind, have 30. Like, that's what they've done on everything, so I'm not even going to consider it serious because they backtrack and go forward on whatever, whenever, and there's no real meaning behind any of it. So, with that, I hope that addresses the poll fairly well, and we're on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a poll, not a question, that says Ukraine wants Eurofighter Typhoon jets. Do you think that is a viable request? It looks like 65% said yes, they can manage these jets. 10% said unsure. 17% said I need more info about it first. And 8% said no, they aren't prepared for them. So my question on this is, well, first off, I need more info. And my question is, since when has Ukraine been training on these jets? Do they have the facilities to maintain them? And also, are they even capable of receiving the jets? So, and what kind of runway is required? Can it be on a rough runway? Does that have to be a good one, etc.?
Let's see. UK commits to training fighter pilots. That was 9 hours ago, so the pilots will be trained on the aircraft now, and they haven't been trained on it before. So that answers that part of the question on the poll. And the other answer is that all of this bullcrap about runways and different types and stuff doesn't make any sense to me. And it seems to be the same kind of arguments about the British in Ukraine, they can't support the weight of an Abrams. And then we sent 30 of them because they kind of can. So
you're saying the runway doesn't matter?
No, not really. The runway does not really matter all that much because tell me this. What is the difference in between, and let me go find them, the Hostomel Airport's runway here that apparently could support the weight of an entire Miria Antonov 224 landing on it, and a normal runway here in the United States like at Shreveport in Louisiana, and let me go find it, at Barksdale. What's the difference in between that runway and this one? apparently not that much, because you can land a B-52 on this runway, and you can land an Antonov 224 on the one in Hostomel. So I don't really see the part where you sit there and go, oh no, it can't really support the weight, because they said the Abrams could, the bridges in Ukraine couldn't support the weight of an Abrams, and then we're sending them out. Let me pull this up real quick.
I don't know. To me, I'm not claiming to be an expert on it, but it seems like the runway would make a huge difference because, for example, that's why some people love the A-10 so much, because you can launch that basically from a dirt strip. But some planes require perfect runways, and it's not a matter of necessarily weight. It's just like the landing gear, can they handle the stress of taking off on an imperfect surface, etc.
Let's see here. F-16, let's see, F-16 landing system. So it says right here, and this is on Chorus, so take it with a grain of salt. Its landing gear is too weak to resist the shock from carrier landing. So it really appears that it's a matter of load-bearing strength that you would have to deal with on a harder landing, probably implying shorter runways. So that appears to be where the concern is, because that wouldn't make any sense, because asphalt's asphalt. There's no such thing as different asphalt on the wheel touching it the wrong way, or it's the wrong kind of asphalt, so the wheels just disintegrate on impact with the ground. It apparently has to do with the force of the landing, and what may be inference there is that most runways in Ukraine are too short for an F-16 to land properly, and so if for it to conduct a hard landing and hit the tarmac quick enough that they can stop the aircraft before it reaches the other end of the runway, that may be the issue. But it wouldn't make any sense to say there are different kinds of asphalt, because that sounds like magic nonsense, in my opinion. Because when in the world has anyone ever gone, you cannot drive this kind of car on certain kinds of roads made out of different kinds of asphalt because the tires...
Actually, you can't drive certain cars if it's like, for example, has a really, really hard suspension on really bad pothole surfaces. Otherwise, you'll absolutely destroy the car. But same thing with the plane. I think it's the same principle. If you run an aircraft with, I guess, lightweight landing gear, you're more likely to damage it than you would a plane with more rugged landing gear like an A-10.
But here's a counter argument I'm going to have to make to that. The biggest air base we had in Afghanistan was Bagram Air Force Base, and let me go find it real quick. This is still around. Here it is. Bagram, right here. We didn't build it. The Soviets built this airport, and we used the runway there. You can actually see it's still marked Old Soviet Air Traffic Control Tower, because this was built by the Soviet Union. And we flew every aircraft the U.S. ever had off of this runway. A Soviet-built runway, probably built to the same specs that the Ukrainian runways are made at. So how in the world did that airfield work for an F-16, but another one in Ukraine wouldn't work?
I mean, I don't know.
I mean, like, I don't know either. Like, that's like my thing. I'm not really getting how there would be a difference. But
well, you know, it makes me wonder. Like Tasman and Vitaly just said, instead of requesting the Eurofighter Typhoon, why not request the Gripen?
I don't know. Maybe they're seeing that there may be an issue with the Swedes sending the Gripen, so they're just asking anyone for anything. I don't know, but still. Moving on from that, I don't really think, to answer the poll, I don't really think it's that big of a question to send the Eurofighter. It's a Gen 4 aircraft, a lot like an F-16, and I'm sure that you could probably find a way to send one. So with that, I hope I addressed that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next poll says Ukraine's military reports an uptick in Russian shelling in several northern regions. Is this potentially a new push? It looks like 54% said yes, Russia is planning to start a new one there. 20% said undecided. 14% said it's probably just random shelling. And 12% said Russia is not equipped to do so. I'm going to say it seems to be probably just random shelling. I don't think they're going to open a new front there, or start a new push, rather. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say I think it's just random shelling. They may have been able to fix some of their supply issues for their artillery, and so they're able to pump out a little bit more than they have been over the past month or two, and that may be the reason why we're seeing an uptick and an increase. But then again, that is a shot in the dark. We really don't know what the increase is about, but that's still my best guess, or educated guess at why that's happening. So with that, I hope that answers that fairly well, and we're on to the next one.
All right, and the fifth and final one is the one I've been waiting to get to the entire time, which says, hypothetically, would it be better to give Ukraine 1,000 AK-style rifles or only 500 AR-style rifles? It looks like 46%, which is the most popular choice, said 500 AR-style rifles, while 36% said 1,000 AK rifles, and 18% said unsure. So essentially, in my opinion, if you chose the 1,000 AK-style rifles, you find it more important to get more weapons in the hands of more soldiers. And if you said 500 AR-style rifles, you put a bigger preference on having quality over quantity and having more qualified soldiers with weapons. So I'm going to go with the 46% that said AR-style rifles because I think AKs are simply ineffective. And if you have a bunch of really, really pitifully aiming soldiers due to the weapon or training, that is about as bad as having very little weapons. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that 500 ARs is way better than 1,000 AKs because AKs break down fairly easily. They're incredibly cheaply made, and due to that cheap quality, they're also a cheap gun. So they're not good at all. So I would have to say that a AR-15 is better. 500 ARs is better than 1,000 AKs. And that's why you also see that most countries in the world that cannot afford the AR end up with the AK, because the AR is preferred if you can afford it, and the AK is what you make do with if you can't. The AR is definitely the gold standard in quality and precision in the modern world as compared to the AK. It always has been. So with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And that was our last poll, so now it's time to move into our Super Chat questions and then get to as many live chat questions as possible tonight. So the very first one goes to DC Williams, who puts in a generous $50 donation, and it's good to see you again, DC. He says, I think it's terribly that cute. Oh, wait a minute, hold on, I butchered that. I think it's terrible that cute, cuddly bobcats are exposed in the Russo-Ukrainian war. One would think no one would harm those cute, cuddly little furballs. I think it's worse than cat juggling. Barbaric. Later, cuz.
And thank you for the support, DC Williams. And I think it is a terrible fate that cute, cuddly bobcats are being exposed to the Russo-Ukrainian war. One would think no one would harm those cute, cuddly little furballs. I think it's worse than cat juggling. Barbaric. Later, cuz. Bye, Felicia. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, DC Williams. And I have to agree with you. It's sad to think that bobcat skid steers are being destroyed at such numbers across the place in Ukraine. It's terrible to think the Russians would take such an endangered species and put them into the line of danger across the entirety of the country and ensure that the numbers continue to dwindle and to absolute extinction. And so with that, thank you so much, cuz, for the support. Of course, we always thank you for helping us to keep this running, and we always thank you, one cuz to another, for helping us. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And thanks and good night, cuz. Up next, we have a $40 super chat from Darren Maynard, who says, I got Mom's card. Slava Ukraine.
Uh-oh.
Oh, I just got what he was trying to say.
Uh-oh. Don't do that. If
Hopefully
you're
that's a joke.
If you're serious, don't do that again. But regardless, I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that's a joke and it wasn't serious, but still, thank you so much for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. When I heard that, Matthew, my eyeballs got really wide, and I thought, hopefully he's not serious. I was like, hopefully that's a joke. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Jose Diaz, who says, thank you, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, two great, young, and great Americans for helping out our Ukrainian brothers and sisters, LSA Forever and Gloria Ukrainia. And thank you very much, Jose. I think you already got off for the night, but we appreciate it very much. And thank you for the high praise.
Dang. But thank you so much, Jose, for the support. If you did get off for the night, I hope you're watching this later on. And thank you so much for the kind words as well. Like I always say, we try our best to make sure that this thing is as well run as possible. One thing that we've actually heard, we always hear both the positive and the negative because we go around and I try and read some of the negative comments that were actually made with sincerity. And the major complaint, well, to start off positively though, the biggest positives that we always get is that the stream runs 6 days a week. We never really miss a day of running the show. And also the other thing is that we get as much information as we can packed in as possible, which I think is great. I think those are great pluses to be attributed to this channel. The one negative I hear that seems to be an actual serious one rather than, like everything else that people say, is that the streams are really long. And I gotta be honest, that's a fair critique, Jose. Like I know you're saying that we're great. I always like to view it fairly and equally. I've got to be honest with y'all, this stream is incredibly long, and it really blows me away that a lot of y'all watch for about 3.5 hours from when we go on to when we turn off. I think that's really wild, and I gotta thank everyone who does that for sticking around, because y'all have as much endurance as we do. But still, I thank you so much, Jose, for the support. I thank you for enjoying these streams the way you do and supporting us, so that way you can help us to keep this thing running, and also being our Lee Spring Army soldier all the way from Puerto Rico. And so with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well, and we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support.
All right, and up next we have a $50 super chat from Tiger2, and I don't think that's their first super chat. But I don't know. I'm scared to say that these days. But Tiger2, thank you very much. And they say, I heard a fireside chat. I saw a baseball bat, and I just laughed until I thought I'd die. But I'd be done seeing about everything when I see a Russian fly.
Oh, it's that song from Dumbo, Matthew.
Sing it.
But I be done seen everything when I see a Russian fly.
Oh, wait a minute. I don't know if you want to sing that one after all.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Now I remember that one. Okay, whatever. Thank you, Matthew, for guiding us straight into that trap, because I didn't even think about it until you said that. Thanks.
We didn't think about that. We didn't think about it.
But still, thank you so much once again, Tiger2, for the support. I feel like that was probably an innocent thing.
Yeah, it was innocent.
Yeah, it was probably innocent. At least it wasn't anything like Nick.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, at least it wasn't that. But still, thank you so much for the support, Tiger2. And thank you so much for enjoying this stream and helping us to keep it running. Because y'all's support is the only way we can sustain this channel, and your support will help us to keep this thing going. And so thank you so much once again. I hope you enjoyed us doing that. Although we didn't really understand for a second there until Matthew said, oh, wait, I don't think you want to do that, after I had sung the whole thing.
Blame it on me, then. How about that?
Yeah, I'm blaming it on you. You're the scapegoat tonight. You're well, I can't say that because that's in a recent light. But anyways, thank you so much once again for the support, Tiger2. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. You know something, Matthew? Every time I sit there and say something like that, like, I can't say that because that's a political light, there is enough instances of everyone doing anything corrupt in a political sense from every side that is like the ink blot test for our audience. Like, they're all thinking, oh, he was about to say this, and it was probably not even that at all. It's just that there's so many instances of it, you could really put it in any direction. But anyways, we're on to the next one. But thank you once again for the support, Tiger2.
Yes, thank you very much. And also thank you for that little moment there. But anyways, let me grab this from the live chat real quick. Typically when I add something behind what the enforcer says, I'm trying to stall. And that's what I just now did right now. But up next, we have a $20 super chat from Sean Tiz, who says, you guys have created something very special, both the channel and the LSA community. Well done.
Hey, and thank you so much, Sean Tiz. You've been around for a while, and it means so much to me. And it also is so cool that the Lee Spring Army and us together have been able to create a culture around this channel that's very unique. We have our own sayings, our own phrases, our own jokes, our own events that have defined what this channel is and who everyone is on this channel. I think it's absolutely crazy to think of how far we've made, and I got to thank you, Sean Tiz, so much for the support, helping us to keep it running, and helping to keep this culture alive. Really unique in a way, and I think it's crazy that we've made LSA an actual thing. Like, people say that on other channels. People complain about it on other channels. Well, only one. I've only seen one complain about it, and I think it's because they're jealous or something, but still, I think it's absolutely wonderful.
I like how the enforcer got defensive to his own comment. He said, I've only seen one complaint. Well, yeah, that's right, only one.
Well, yeah, because I was sitting there I was thinking of who it was, and I was like, yeah, it must be jealousy because they don't have anything like the LSA. They don't have people who are proud to be, part of the LSA or part of their community. So they just got miffed and started threatening to ban people from the chat that said it. You remember that, don't you?
Yeah, yeah, I do. It's the Call them out.
Call them out. Call them out. And you know, we tried to let that go, you know, when it happened, because we were already beefing with them. And what's funny is that the first time we were beefing with them, it was entirely accidental because they had misunderstood something that we had said about someone else. So then they started beefing with us, and then we started beefing with them. And then I cleared up the beef, went out of my way to clear up this beef because I found out it was a misunderstanding that shouldn't have even happened. And then the guy snubbed us behind the scenes when I was trying to talk to him about joining us in a fundraiser thing. Multiple times. It wasn't just once. It was about 5 times, and I gave a whole lot of leeway, snubbed us over and over, and now I got to be for real with them. I'm not mentioning their name. Someone actually just mentioned it in the live chat. I'm not mentioning it because that may as well be a plug, and I'm not going to plug them. So, you know, if you get the channel name right, Twinskin's got it right, but it's not any other channel. I don't want y'all going around saying, oh, they said this about you, and going to like random channels like Perun, because Perun's great. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support, Sean Tiz, and enjoying this channel.
All right. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Rad Doctor, who says, how high can the Russian tank loss go before they are out or combat ineffective? Thank you for your unending dedication to Ukraine and their success.
And thank you so much for enjoying the unending dedication to Ukraine. We try and make sure that it is constant, and also one thing that always weighs on me to keep it constant, even when I get tired, is whenever we get messages from soldiers that are fighting on the front, and they say this channel is a great relief and something they can watch and laugh at and listen to the news and stuff. That really keeps me going a whole load. And I think it also inspires Matthew, because Matthew was really excited about the message we got last night. He was like telling her mom and everything about it. He's like, oh my god, y'all. He's like, we got a message. But still, I think it's great. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and enjoying that. And make sure to reread their question again real quick, man. So that way I can make sure to get it right.
Yes, the question was, how high can the Russian tank loss go before they are out or combat ineffective?
We don't really know, because they are in the constant process of trying to pull new ones out of their inventory, and we really don't know how many somewhat functional T-62s they can get running. So it really depends, when do they start running out of T-62s. That will be when they run out of tanks in total. So I'd give them about another 1,500 tanks left, maybe 1,750, and then they're going to be about flat out of tanks at that point. So with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much for enjoying this channel.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Mike, who says, well, Shiza, it looks like we blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. See link and note in my live chat. I can't seem to post link in super chat. And sadly, Mike, the Discord bot will not let you, or excuse me, not the Discord bot, the Nightbot won't let you put a link in the chat, sadly. So, sadly, we don't have it. But, Enforcer, what say you?
I say, I would say I wouldn't doubt it. It seems like something that would make sense if we did it, to screw over the Russian economy, because it really just screws them over. And we already saw that the Europeans have found another source for gas, like I said they would, because it's not like the Europeans are poor and Russia has them by the balls. They can go and buy gas from anyone that sells it. So we saw that happen, and it wasn't any big deal. So I wouldn't doubt that we did it. But sadly, we can't see the links because we stop people from posting links, so that way no one gets grifted on in the chat, because we've had people come through and try and do that before way early on, and we made sure the links couldn't be shared or anything on a stream. But with that, I still thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And also, someone asked, why do I keep on bringing up the beef? To cover that really quickly, keep on bringing it up because it was incredibly annoying to me. I'll be honest with y'all. I went out of my way to be incredibly nice after I understood that it was a misunderstanding, and then for them to be as immature and petty to sit there and completely snub me 5 times over the course of several weeks when I was trying to reach out to them, and not only just reach out to them for the hell of it, trying to get them involved in a fundraiser to actually help out Ukrainians. I found that to be pretty low, and that's what's really irked me about that and is keeping me on that, and that's why I keep on bringing it up. So that's why. Don't take it as me just trying to harp on it. Well, I kind of am. It really annoyed me. Anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And also, by the way, to return to Mike's question, since we weren't able to get the link He told me that his source was apparently a tweet from Edward Snowden. So I was looking through his Twitter page here, and it looks like he retweeted several different articles relating to alleged sources saying that the USA blew up the pipeline. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would say, I don't know if Edward Snowden's bringing it up. I mean, isn't he an asylee inside of Russia right now?
I believe so.
You know, the Russians might be using him. They might be twisting his arm, going "Sit, blit," you know. So I don't really know.
Well, wait a minute. Wait a minute. I think I'm getting mixed up with Assange. I'm not sure if he's in Russia anymore. Is he? Pull it up.
Let's pull it up. Julian Assange, right?
Well, no, it's Edward Snowden.
Oh, okay.
I was thinking I was getting mixed up with Assange.
Edward Snowden. I swear he's still in Russia. Yeah, he's an American-Russian consultant, and he lives in. Let's see. Where does he live now? Does it say? Is he known for?
He's in Russia since 2022. It says on the citizenship.
Where does it say that again?
On the right, under citizenship.
Oh yeah, he became a Russian citizen earlier last year. Oh yeah, I remember that. We covered it. And it was a political deal. Yeah, he is still in Russia. And
he's compromised then.
Yeah, he's even adopted a Russian name, so he's compromised. You can't trust him. He could be just saying stuff because the Russians are telling him to, or otherwise he'll get punished there, and there's nowhere else for him to go. So with that, I hope that answers that fairly well. And I would doubt, Gerald, that he's still working for the CIA. I would highly doubt it, considering what he did that really made the CIA look embarrassed. But with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Walter A. Lakota Jr., who says, Aloha, Enforcer Matt, and LSA from OG Ellison Bosun. Yeah. Look up the Battle of Port Arthur. He puts in parentheses Pyongyang, because this is now really looking like the Russo-Japan War of 1905, WW0. Parallels are almost the same. What say you?
Oh, the Battle of Port Arthur. Let me make sure this is the right one. Yeah, this is the right one. Wait a minute, no. This is not the Battle of Tsushima, where they would just get beat. The Russians got slaughtered at the Battle of Port Arthur, and they also got slaughtered at the Battle of Tsushima, because the Russians suck at running a navy, because most of the time they can't, especially considering that they have no warm water ports except for Sevastopol. That's the only slightly experienced fleet they have. The rest of them may as well just be sitting at port like a land force. And so they got slaughtered here at the Battle of Port Arthur. Port Arthur is actually around the area of Pyongyang now. And I'll try and show you all this. It's actually here. Dalian is where Port Arthur was supposed to be. And the battle occurred somewhere in here in between the Japanese and the Russians. Russians got pretty messed up. And then they went on to the Battle of Tsushima, and then they got completely destroyed. So I would say that it's somewhat realistic to modern times with how a country, the Japanese were never expected to win this war, that going into the statement, that the Russians were completely beat by a country that was not expected to slaughter. That is I guess you could say that is the similarity that I would see in between then and now. So with that,
and Walter says he's talking about both armies.
Both armies, not the Navy.
Yes, he said both armies.
Both armies. Wait a minute, reread that again so I can try and with that in context, understand what's being said.
He says, look up the Battle of Port Arthur, Pyongyang, because this is now really looking like the Russo-Japan War of 1905. Parallels are almost the same.
Let's see, Pyongyang. Siege of Port Arthur? Is that what he's talking about?
It could be. He says Battle of Port Arthur in the super chat.
Let's see, I don't know a lot about the Siege of Port Arthur. I know a little bit about the Battle of Port Arthur, the naval battle, but I don't know a lot about the siege. So, unfortunately, I can't really comment on this much and how it's looking like this, because I don't really know how the battle unfolded. It looks like the Japanese took higher casualties than the Russians did. So, unfortunately, I'm going to have to declare ignorance on this one. But I thank you so much for sharing this with us. I will try and look into this battle after the stream. And thank you so much once again for the support in helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Indy Andy 4C, who says, let's see. Let me send this to you because it's probably innocent, but for some reason my mind is sending off alarm bells because of it. Let me let you read that.
It's going to review. I don't know what that means. Why in the world does it almost sound like code?
It almost sounds like there's like a pronunciation behind it or something that might have a secondary meaning. I'm not sure. Andy, tell us what that means.
Yes, please tell us what that means, Andy. For now, we can't really read it off because I don't really know what it's supposed to mean. And I don't know if this is something where we're going to be had or what. And we can't get had because while that's funny to get us had, we can also get thrown off YouTube for that. So we got to be very careful about that.
He says it is funny Ukraine cussing.
Oh, okay. Now we can read it. Hopefully we're still not being had. So he said, your bunny sash leak. Ask Starsky. He wants World of BTR's game. Your bunny sash leak. I still don't know what that means, but still.
Hopefully we haven't been had. What is that, Andy? Have you had us?
if you've had us, Andy, I'll never forgive this. But still, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope we've addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Paul Smalzer, who says, please produce a video discussing the Budapest Memorandum and the worldwide implications of not fulfilling out U.S. and UK responsibilities under the treaty.
And thank you for the support, and pretty cool idea. You actually asked for something pretty extensive, which is making a video. Really hard to do in the current situation, because it's just very tough. I mean, there's not a lot of time. But I will see about trying to make one about the Budapest Memorandum, because it is pretty interesting in a way. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and I will try and work on that video in the background. And thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have another super chat from Tiger2, who puts in another $50 donation, and thank you very much. He says, sorry, no bad intent meant. I remembered that childhood song and thought the lyrics fit with your hilarious commentary. Thanks again, and jaga jaga.
And thank you so much for the support, Tiger2. I completely understand where you're coming from. We were both fairly sure it was innocent. So the reason why we got scared is because Matthew remembered and then said it, and then I remembered that that is a part of the movie Dumbo, and nowadays it falls under controversy because of the crows and what the crows were. So then I remembered that, and I was like, oh no. But I watched Dumbo when I was a kid, and I didn't know any of that controversy.
Everyone did, I think.
Yeah, I liked the movie. The one thing I didn't understand though about Dumbo was the trippy alcohol segment where Dumbo like got a whole snoot full and he like had like this weird trippy session or whatever. I didn't really get that part, but it was still a good movie. I liked it. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Tiger2. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. It's totally fine. We completely understood it was unintentional. And still, thank you once again for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from E3ECO, who puts in a $10 donation and says, I agree with Paul. I'd like to see a vid on the Budapest Memorandum as well.
And thank you for the support. And it seems like we're getting a lot of momentum behind the Budapest Memorandum. And so I think we will try and see about making a video about that in the future. I don't know when the future will be, but we'll try because we're very busy over the days leading up to the 1-year anniversary. But we'll still see about doing one at some point. And also, by the way, the reason why a lot of videos haven't come out is not just due to the lack of time that I currently have, but it's due to the quality. I like the videos we make because I summarize stuff in about 14 minutes. However, I want to make them a little bit more interesting to look at than just a, screen like we're normally looking at right here. I want to make it more interesting than that, actually have some detail and animations going along with stuff, and that takes time and effort and planning to do, so I would have to put a little bit more effort into my normal videos to make them more interesting to watch. But with that, I hope I addressed that fairly well. Thank you once again for backing up the idea of a Budapest Memorandum video. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a super chat from Hoodoo, Texas, who puts in a $10 donation and says 60 Bradleys with 500 tows on the Ark Integrity are now on the final leg of their journey to Bremenhaven. ETA is tomorrow, and then by rail to Poland and then to Ukraine.
Bremerhaven, right next door to Wilhelmshaven, where a Lee Spring Army viewer lives. Very neat little port. It's actually fairly well known, like Wilhelmshaven was known at a time for being a larger port. And interestingly enough, Bremerhaven leads down to the town of Bremen. Who would have thought? Hamburg does not really have a port leading up to it. You just sail down the Elbe and the Elbe River and straight into Hamburg itself, which is really weird when you think about it because it's so far inland. But anyways, that is great to hear, Hoodoo, Texas. I thank you for the support, and hopefully we'll see those Bradleys on film being unloaded somewhere around here fairly soon. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, helping this channel to keep on running, and of course, letting us know what's going on. And so with that, it's actually going to go right here. The ship that would unload the Bradleys would go here, because that is the dock pretty much for unloading vehicles, because you can see all the cars stacked up and lined up through here to be loaded onto ships or unloaded and shipped out. But with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from CK Bold, who says, take a question from the live chat.
And thank you so much once again for the support, and we will take one from the live chat. And so with that, what do we got?
All right, and this one is sponsored by CK Bold, and it goes to Aaron Lowe, who says, Enforcer, why doesn't Ukraine just destroy the roads as they retreat, taking away the Russian advantage?
It's very difficult to destroy roads. It requires a decent amount of explosives to do, and that's very costly. And also, if they ever want to conduct an offensive forward, they would have to rebuild those roads as well, much like the Russians would have to build them too. So if you're wanting to eventually retake that ground, you don't want to destroy the roads, because then you're screwing yourself over if you ever go on an offensive again. So with that, I thank you so much for sponsoring a live chat, and I hope we answered that live chat fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one we have is from Chip Kerwan, who puts in a 10 and says, what engineering and design lets demining vehicles work, plowing up or using spinning chained weights to pummel mines? Do some smart ones still blow up anyway? And maybe show some fails in a rabbit hole.
Very interesting idea. Now, mine clearing vehicles, I don't really know of any of them that fail much. The first one was the Sherman Flail, I believe it was called, and I'll try and show you all one here. You see it right here. There's a Sherman Flail. The thing has a big flail on it with chains. They spin the thing around in a circle, and the giant chains hit the ground going thwack. And when they thwack a mine, it explodes in front of the Sherman, and then they keep rolling forward. You can actually see a picture of the flail working right there and flinging up all that dirt as it continues to plow over the fields and clear a path. Really weird as a principle, but this would pretty much carry on into the modern day as the main principle behind some mine clearing vehicles. It's still bizarre to me, and also look at that and tell me that would not be a crime to be used against soldiers on the ground. Like, you know, line up the prisoners and turn on the flail and just start driving forward. That would be scary as hell.
That would be rough.
That would be a rough day. I don't think those guys would be having a good day, and I think they'd be tenderized by the end of it. But let's see. Anti-mine vehicles. Let me go and try and find some. So we can see one of these modern anti-mine vehicles. I don't even know what the philosophy is behind this. So I'll have to be honest with you. I'm going to have to declare ignorance on that one. You can see a T-72 mine clearing vehicle right here with rollers that clear a path just in front of the treads, and anything below those heavy wheels will explode. And then what else do we have? I'm trying to find some other ones. By and large, as long as enough weight is applied onto the mines, they will explode and they will operate, but that's not to say that sometimes they do fail. And I've got to be honest with you, I'm largely out of my league here to be talking about anti-mine vehicles, but this is about the best information I can give. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support. I hope we have addressed that as best as I can. And also, what the hell is this?
Man.
Dang, dude.
That's different.
That is different. What the hell? Like, there's a whole bunch of them, too. Like, look at that one.
Dang.
Like, they actually used it.
Oh, and it has like independent suspension and everything on it.
That's bizarre looking. I don't really like those. I like the one with the flail. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope I answered that the best I can. I know it's not an incredibly educated answer to it, but I hope it was at least informative in some small way. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Craig Platel, who says, Enforcer, I suggest you download the US DoD Law of Land Warfare Manual. It's 1,100 pages, but easy to use, gives direction to US military and great background info, real life examples, and great footnoting.
And thank you for the support, and thank you for the recommendation. I would like to read something like that. Unfortunately, I really couldn't due to the time constraints, because I rarely have time to read anything at all, and it would be very hard to try and read 1,000 pages, even if it is easy to read. But still, I thank you for the suggestion, and I will try and get around to that sometime in the future. And so, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Technician Underground, who says some funds to help keep advertising free stream.
And thank you for the support, and thank you for sponsoring a free stream. We have no ads. We do not make people pay to be in the live chat. We don't have memberships. We don't have any of that. The only way we support this channel is through y'all's support, and I gotta thank you so much for sending some in, so that way we can keep this thing running. Because without y'all, this wouldn't be possible in any given way. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
And the next one goes to Terrence Custer, who puts in a 10 and says, if we're scrapping A-10s, why not send them all to Ukraine? The Warthog is the cheapest to operate plane that the Air Force flies. And Terrence, that's exactly what I brought up, I think, a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. I don't understand if we're actually retiring them, which I have a suspicion we're actually not, is the reason why we're not sending them. But what say you, Enforcer?
I would say, from what I remember, we're not. When will the A-10 retire? Let's see. The Air Force plans to retire only 21 of them in 2023. So is the A-10 getting...
I don't think it'll happen.
21 of them I could see. Most of them, though, which we have, I think, several hundred of them, I don't see that happening soon. So that may be the reason why we're not really sending a lot of them, and also a huge limiting factor as well, because there will be a very small number next year that we could send. Well, this year that we could send, because it is 2023. But I think that sending them wouldn't be that bad of an idea. It would help them out in a way. I just feel like they have some vulnerabilities built into them that would have to be considered. So with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $7 super chat from John Mark Pagan Owl, who says, I believe you are incorrect when mentioning arm shooting blind. The U.S. bought MiGs for Top Gun school. U.S. company modified the MiGs to fire arms properly.
You disagreed with Matthew Banham. I'm just kidding. That's something that everyone always loves to say whenever they're about to get banned, is that they'll cuss us out and then sit there and say, man, they don't allow you to say anything on here. But
call them out.
Call them out. Call them out. But that is a good point. We actually did get some MiGs in through one form or another for the Top Gun programs, and they were actually flown out of a base in the southwest of the U.S. I forgot which one it was, but they were used in a training program, and I know the jokes are coming in, called Constant Peg, and they just used these MiG-23s against the F-14 so that way F-14 pilots could directly verse themselves against Soviet adversaries. The true fact of the matter is that that was really a cover. That top secret program was a cover for another top secret program where they were testing and flying the F-117 Nighthawks and trying to get those into service. But moving on from that, that is a good point. And they may have rigged those to fire Western missiles, but at the same time, in a training situation, you wouldn't really need to. But if I remember correctly, they did mess around with them a whole load. So with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address that comment fairly well, and I think you actually may be correct on that. But I don't think we can make those kinds of vast changes to Ukrainian aircraft, because those were in the United States. and were, pretty much for us to modify heavily and keep on the ground, while Ukraine really doesn't have the ability to ground some jets, maybe for a couple of months, to do those kinds of modifications. Also, I saw Paula McDonald say, "That's just wrong. Please clarify what's just wrong," and I'll try and go and look at it and see if it is wrong. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a super chat from Bernard Rubin, who puts in a $7 donation. And he says, here's to At the Enforcer's Chicken and Waffle Fun. My question is, what is the song that plays at the start of the 10-minute start off? I'm having a really hard time with that one for some reason.
Dang it, he asked a question I can't answer. I don't know what that song is anymore. I knew it back in the day. I actually knew all three of them. The Bayraktar song, the Cossacks were riding, is the one in the middle, and then the one at the beginning. I don't know the name of it anymore. I completely forgot the name. So sadly, I don't even know. I mean, it's really anyone's guess. I said it a while ago, and some of y'all may remember which song it is, but I can't remember it at all. But I do thank you so much for the support and supporting the Chicken and Waffle Fun. And I got to be honest with you, Matthew, this looks scrumptious. Like, like getting some syrup and then putting some chicken on top of waffles. It does sound like a really good idea.
Oh, what's good?
Oh, man, look at that. Dude.
Could I have some chicken?
Oh, man.
With syrup?
Good.
And butter?
Why do you sound like you're mentally deranged? You're like, I have some soup. Oh, with butter. But anyways,
wait a minute. Does that say Korean fried chicken and waffles?
Where?
Oh my goodness! Do you see that one right there? Like, look, see the one that says Korean fried chicken?
This one?
Look to the left, two over.
This one? Oh. Why make that distinction? Like, why?
Yeah,
is it
exactly.
Just not, that's always weird when people make distinctions like that. I'm like, why? What's the point behind
that? A little bit sussy.
A little sussy. This is about to get into that general area of the movie Get Out. Where they start like taking the brains out and stuff. That's kind of getting in that direction. Why make that distinction? Everyone else is just like, it's chicken and waffles. These people are like making a whole other distinction with this thing. That's kind of a little weird. Anyways. This looks delicious. Moving on from that weird side note, this looks delicious. I don't know if jalapenos would be good on that, though. I feel like that's a bad idea, but the rest of them look great. And so with that, also real quick, let me try and scroll up and find what you said. Let's see here. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Paula McDonald. I thought you said the name of the program was wrong. I was going to be like, well, let's look into it and see if it is. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much for the Chicken and Waffle Fund, and I hope we addressed that fairly well. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support.
All right, and real quick, there's a really fast poll we got to go over. Do you think the A-10 Warthog will be retired soon? 34% said yes, they will retire soon. 22% said unsure. 14% said maybe only a few. And 30% said no, it's just talk, and it won't happen. And I'm going with the 30% option. And Enforcer, what say you?
I would say there really is no clear answer as to when they will retire. I'll say one of them could be decommissioned for good. The Air Force now plans to retire the entire fleet over the next 5 to 6 years. And that was made in 2022. So that means that we'll probably see A-10s cease to exist in the Air Force, at least according to the current information, by late 2020s, maybe 2030. But the problem with that statement is that in the early 2000s and the late 90s, even before the Gulf War, they were already talking about retiring the entire A-10 Thunderbolt fleet, and the Gulf War changed everyone's opinion, and then their lifespan was expanded massively, and that's why they're still here, and that's why we're still talking about them. So it could be that they're extended even further. I don't know. The F-35 is a solid replacement to the A-10. It fills the exact same role and also other roles. So we may see that the A-10 actually does get retired this time. So I would have to say, off of that poll, I think that they will retire them soon, and that soon being in several years. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a $7 super chat from Mr. Bone, who says, look at the clip when Guy is getting dragged and he does the Woody arm. The guy on the left side of the road is up chucking. Have you guys ever heard or ever thought of having a guest from channel come into the chat?
A guest from channel. I don't think
I guess from another channel?
From another, we've had guests from other channels come on, most notably Operator Starsky, who's been on here several times. Really cool channel. We could bring on more guests. We have plans to bring on more guests in the future, but that'll be special, super secret. And I also thank you so much for the support. I've got to be honest with y'all, I have a massive headache right now, so that's why it's really taking me a lot to think and talk, is because I'm having to try and power through the pain of this unbelievable headache that's happening right over the top of my left eye on my forehead. But with that, I hope I've answered that question fairly well. I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, before we move to our next one, Bilbo, there's nothing wrong with sweet cornbread. I think it's pretty good, actually. And I don't think it's a sin, coming from a Southerner. That's what say me. Enforcer, what say you, real quick?
I would say that there's nothing wrong with sweet cornbread. I love cornbread. I really love the sweet cornbread. I mean, like, I think salty cornbread can be done really wrong most of the time. Like, it just gets too salty, and you don't really taste the corn anymore. Sweet cornbread's kind of like a cake, and I think it should be more cakey than bready, because cornbread's a treat. But still, you know, that's just me. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, at least in my opinion, but you can really make cornbread anyway. It's a free country. Cook it how you want. But with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, Borbula puts in a $5 donation and says, yes. And Borbula, thank you very much. And yes, we appreciate that support, and thank you for being a longtime viewer. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Not For One, but For All Ukraine, who says, a former snake eater wants to know if we can run another poll on how many vets are here with the Leaf Spring Army and Slava Ukraine.
Good question. Let's run that poll. And also, thank you for the support. And I don't think I've ever heard Snake Eater before, but that's new. So with that, thank you for the support. We will make sure to run that poll here soon. And with that, we are on to the next one. While Matthew makes that poll, and I sit here and try and figure out why this headache is so bad.
All right. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Dean London, who says, I'll donate, but also send my taxes for F-16, Slava Ukraine, with the very angry, pissed off looking emoji face.
And thank you for the support. I wouldn't be that mad about sending F-16s. Usually they're already being consigned to retirement, so, you know, better for it to go get a second life somewhere else. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope I addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Marcus Burtonshaw, who says, I've never been prouder to be a British than when I see our continued and unwavering support for Ukraine. I hope we will give them whatever they need to defeat Putin's evil regime. Slava Ukraine, Slava LSA.
And Slava Ukraine. And I would say it is a good moment to be proud to be British, proud to be American, proud to be French or German. Because a lot of these, well, Germany, I don't know. But, you know, I got to go back and go, I don't know. But a lot of countries are getting a lot of good reasons to be proud of who they are and what they stand for, because they're helping out Ukraine with what they stand for and what they're trying to defend. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope I addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Squamous Tarkus, who says, does nothing off the table mean that they could send you?
Great question. They could. And I'd be fine with that. I'd kind of just deal with it. You know, it's not really like you'd have a choice at that point, and I don't really think I'd protest helping out. But still, thank you so much once again for, of course, the support. And I hope that answers the question fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Next up, we have a $5 super chat from Landlubber, who says, a short plane trip.
And thank you for the support, and thank you for the short plane trip. I don't know where we're flying to, but maybe we're flying to a place where I can get my head fixed. And so with that, thank you once again for the support. I hope that addresses the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Somebody's going to clip that and use it to bash you later.
Yeah. And by the way, to clarify a footnote, that's about my headache. It is terrible. It's gotten worse. Now it's all over my head. So with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Lars Rai Jepson, who says, Slava Ukraine from Disney Wish in the Caribbean.
Disney Wish? Do you know what that is, Matthew?
It's a cruise ship.
It's a cruise ship. They are on the cruise ship watching this. Hey, could you have the captain make a PA about our channel and just have everyone on the ship subscribe? That would be cool. I mean, like, I think that'd be neat. There's the Disney Wish, by the way, in the middle of the.
And look at the title. It says Disney Wish Accidents and Incidents.
Well, let's read them. I'm actually interested now.
Don't make them scared. Don't read them off too loud.
Incidents. Due to Hurricane Ian, 2 of Florida's home ports were completely closed for maritime traffic, while that's a port closure. The liner docked at Port Canaveral, arriving from Europe due to supply chain issues related to the continuing disease. 2's test voyages were canceled. The main voyage remained unchanged. Announced that the MS Disney Wish's completion has been postponed for 6 weeks as a result of the ship's maiden voyage. Oh, wait a minute. This ship is the new one, isn't it?
Yeah, probably so.
Because like all the notes are about maiden voyages. So I think this is actually a new one they added to the fleet recently, if I'm correct. But
it's
still,
Disney Wish it doesn't sink. Disney Wish it floats.
Disney wishes that this boat floats like their company instead of sinking like their stocks are. Because Disney is dying right now, and they're desperately trying to grasp at anything to stay alive. Kind of sad because Disney is a huge American legacy company, you know, a huge part of our history and stuff. But you know, every company has good times, bad times. You know, Sears isn't here anymore. But still, I thank you so much for the support. I hope you're having fun on that ship, and I hope you're enjoying the stream. Make sure they know about it though. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support and letting us know about where you are and where you or what you're doing in the Lee Spring Navy.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Eric, who says maybe an easy fix for the Olympic issue is France refuses all Russia and Belarusian visas during that time.
Interesting. That is a decent proposal, but I feel like the Olympic Committee would probably have a fundamental problem with that, and then you just come back to boycott the Olympics. And it just goes back to square one. And so with that, I thank you for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Sean White, who says, in reference to jammed AK, I have a 50 and an AR-308 that won't cycle if you don't retrain them properly. Firing in the air like he did won't let the bolt cycle.
Interesting. I think if you were sharing that with us, that may have been a problem, and I may have been misunderstanding it. But I'm still not a big fan of AKs. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Neoclassic YouTube, who says, hello, have another coffee now, or have another coffee later. Slava LSA and Slava Ukraine. And also, thanks for giving us the option on now or later. It's like candy.
And thank you for the support. Long live the LSA and Slava Ukraini. And I think I'll have to have the coffee later, because if I had one now, I would be up all night. But with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Sausage Gravy Biscuit. Big love from your favorite breakfast food, supporting success in all you guys do.
Thank you so much for the support. I'll make sure to keep enjoying the delicious breakfast foods. And because I love breakfast food. I mean, who doesn't like sausage, eggs, bacon? You know, like, that's like a treat, really. Because breakfast foods, for some reason, aren't really eaten much, at least for me. And I love eating breakfast food. I think it's great. So with that, thank you for the support. I hope we will be able to continue to eat breakfast foods or find breakfast food. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support. Also, Activista is like begging us right now. He's like, you can end the stream. You understand that people will understand, right? Listen, man, I didn't get the name, the one who never sleeps, from one viewer for no reason. I will make sure, Activista, that this thing keeps running, hell or high water. I will drop dead on this computer before I make sure not to address as many live chats as we can and as many super chats as we can. Because I don't ever want it to seem like, because I think this is really dumb on my end, or on anyone's end for that matter, is to act like you're more important than your mission or your project. I think that's silly, because then you never get anywhere, because you're always taking precedent over your goal and your mission. My mission is to report this news. My mission is also to make sure that everyone keeps up to date on the war in Ukraine, and we continue to keep this channel running at full speed and momentum, so that way fundraisers are incredibly successful. That is all of the missions and goals that I have, and I feel like I would really be throwing those short if I took a break, like, and like just sat there and went, okay, everyone, I'm going to throw y'all super chats into the win and the live chats too. I'm getting off. We've done that, I think, only once before, and I was really suffering that day, and I never want to make that a habit ever. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you once again for extending the offer, Activista. But I've got to be the one to keep running. This machine does not stop. So with that, we are on to the next one. And I'm not saying I'm a machine, but this channel's a machine, and I'm a part of it. So we're on to the next one.
And also, I just saw Walter Illicotta Jr. say that he worked on a cruise ship at one point. And I got to say, Walter said he hated it. And it just got me thinking, is it just me, or does cruise ships seem like big petri dishes for like germs? Like, I've heard these horror stories of like entire shipfuls of people catching the same virus and like the whole ship having to be quarantined. And like, have you heard that?
I think I have. I'm just not really a big fan of the concept of cruises. You know, cruises are great and cruises are an interesting thing, but I'm not really a big fan of doing that as a vacation idea, because I like to stay on land and I like to travel. However, I can see one thing. I can do one thing and I would understand it. Transatlantic crossings. Like, I could get on a ship run by Cunard, because they do transatlantic crossings, and they also do a few cruises. And I could do that, but I just don't really see the point of doing cruises. I don't know, maybe I was never on a good one. We only took one in our life, and it was on a very old ship, like one of the first cruise ships Carnival Cruise Lines ever had. It was being retired, and it sucked. I threw up the whole time. My dad threw up the whole time. We were terribly sick. We made it to Cozumel, and they only allowed us 6 hours on shore before we got back on that thing and sailed for another 4 days. It was the worst.
And then we accidentally drove out into cartel land too, because we were so ignorant about the area.
Yeah, we drove out into the cartel lands. Let me go find Cozumel. It's like, yeah, here we go. Look, it's right here. This is Cozumel. So, you got Cozumel here. That's where the ship docks. Look, it's a Disney ship right there, actually. So it docks right there. You go into the town. It's like, oh, look, it's Mexico. And then, you go driving around. We actually drove the entire island. Like, where this road is right here, we drove the whole thing all the way down to here. And then we went to these beaches. We didn't know that these beaches were closed off, because they don't really make that clear. Because I guess no one ever goes back here. So we hung out on a beach for a little bit. Then Matthew scraped his knee, and that was kind of a big deal because we were really young, and we didn't know, like, that rock was pretty jagged, and it was like in the middle of nowhere.
It was messed up.
Yeah, so
I got really screwed up by that rock. But it felt really sketchy back here too. Like, it was real quiet. No tourists were back here, and it just had like the feeling of something sketchy might be going on the backside of the island.
Yeah, so we all got back in the Jeep. We drove all the way back up the road, all the way up this one, and then all the way back up into Cozumel. And then we got back on the ship out here at this little dock, and then we went back into the sea, and we sailed all the way into hell itself and all the way back to Mobile. It was terrible. I absolutely hated it. Oh, look, Cancun was right there. We literally passed Cancun to go to Cozumel.
Oh.
Look at that.
What do you know?
Everyone's always talking about, oh, go to Cancun. I've never seen Cancun. I don't really know anything about it rather than the name. I didn't know it was that close to Cozumel, though. Like, that's crazy. And also, that's kind of a big island. Like, I never realized how big of an island that is.
It was, really, I gotta say.
It's big.
Right there on the Yucatan.
On the Yucatan Peninsula. That's where avocados come from, if I remember correctly. Well, a decent amount of them.
Yeah, the avocados are having to be transported by armed truck now because the criminals are hijacking them to sell them. Because you can sell them for like $100,000 a truckload now.
Yeah, I mean, it's outrageous. There's like a whole entire criminal underworld being made around avocados. Kind of like how we overthrew governments in Central America for Chiquita banana in the 50s. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. And I hope we addressed that all fairly well. And thank you once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Sausage Gravy Biscuit once again, who says, shout out to Mick Ranger for his nightly 0 cent support. Thank you, Mick, and Slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support. And thank you to everyone who contributes a special little bit to this channel. Every one of y'all is very special in each one of y'all's ways. And without y'all, this channel wouldn't be what it is. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope we addressed that comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have another one from Walter A. Lakota Jr., who puts in a 5 and says, me again. I was talking about Russo-Japan War, 1904 through 1905, and what we're seeing in this war has its roots from this past war, lives and trenches used.
Oh, okay, now I know what you mean. That's true, and really, all of the wars, all the way from the Civil War to the First World War, all had major contributing factors to what war looks like today. World War I was the culmination of everything that had happened in between the 1860s to 1914 that made modern warfare truly what it is. So with that, I gotta thank you so much for the support and also sharing that with us, because that's true. There is similarities in that regard to the current war in Ukraine. And so with that, thank you once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a $5 super chat from Anthony Bestwick, who says, look at the speech, timestamp 2020, yet another quote for history.
I would, let's go take a look at that real quick. President of Ukraine. There we go. And what was the timestamp?
2020.
2020. 2020. Here we go.
And I will explain. It's the helmet of a real Ukrainian pilot. He is one of our most successful aces, and he's one of our kings. And the writing on the helmet reads, "We have freedom, give us wings to protect it."
That's pretty cool.
Is the pilot good, though?
Well, he's an ace.
I mean, like, is he good? Like, why are they giving his helmet away?
Well, he's an ace. He's like, oh, you mean like, is he? Well, you're making that ambiguous sounding. I thought you meant, is he like a good pilot? Well, he's got to be alive, because they're talking about him in the current sense. He didn't say he was a great pilot. He says he is a great pilot, which means he's alive.
Well, I guess he got a new helmet.
Maybe, I suppose. But still, pretty cool. And I thank you for sharing that with us. That's a pretty cool little helmet. And also pretty cool that it says, give us the wings. Another plug for the Ukrainians. So with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Craig Platel, who says, my understanding is Ukrainian harms need to be given target data on the ground and can't be retargeted in flight.
That may be a correct understanding. The way I read it back in the day is that they launch blindly and they pretty much go bulldog mode like a Maverick does. And if they can find anything, well, not a Maverick, I'm sorry, a Phoenix. If they can find anything, they lock onto it. If they can't, they just fly until they run out of propellant, and then they just slowly start falling to the ground or explode in flight. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for the support and sharing that with us, because you may be right. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $3 super chat from Rocco World Domination, who says, armor stuck by shells, turrets fly into the sky. What an epic sight. This is a haiku.
And thank you for the support. And I thought it was. So with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And a very good haiku, I would say. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Dupper Bob, who says, Slava Ukraine. A $2 donation from Dubsy Dapster, who says pineapple whiskey again. A $2 super chat from BC Skyman, who says testing.
And it does work.
And thank you all three very much for the support. BC, it does work. Dupper, of course. Here I'm Slava. And Dubsy, we don't drink. But thank you all.
And thank y'all to all of y'all once again for the support. Y'all help this channel to keep on running. And without y'all, it wouldn't have ever been possible for us to keep this thing running for so long and help it to keep running well on into the future. And so with that, thank you all once again. I hope I've addressed all of those fairly well. And I think it's now time for us, if I'm correct, to get on into the live chats.
We have one more super chat, and this one goes to the Stantra, who puts in a 2 and says, "Thanks, guys. Great reporting and so much fun on the Russians." Cheers from Singapore.
And thank you so much for the support, and also a very rarely Spring Army member. We don't have a lot of viewers from the nation of Singapore. Interestingly enough, you wouldn't believe this, Matthew, but Singapore was actually forcefully ousted from Malaysia and became an independent country not by their own choice.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's very weird. It's actually, I believe, one of the only 2 instances in history where such a thing occurred. But that's not to say that Singapore is definitely not a jewel of Southeast Asia. This place is something. And I've never heard a bad word spoken about Singapore by anyone who's ever been there that I know. Everyone says that
Fascinating.
What the hell was that, Matty? Where'd you find this? What was but
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
But this thing, the city-state of Singapore is an incredibly cool place. Really neat. And I've never heard a bad thing about it. Let's drop down and see what it looks like. And it's actually got Street View everywhere, like that. And it is really nice, actually. Like, nice, tall
Oh, look at that Culver's in the middle.
Culver's?
Yeah, in the middle.
Oh, get out of here. Get out of here. Let's go to another part of Singapore. Like the United Square Shopping Mall. Let's see what that looks like. They got a lot of malls in Singapore. They must still be in the malls. Malls kind of died in the United States, except for the really big ones that can market themselves as tourist attractions. The normal mall is dead. But this is a nice one. We can even see that Fitra chicken rice.
Oh, yes, sir. Look at that chicken back there on that rack.
Man, they got the chicken on the rack. Like, dang, wow, this is a nice mall. What about other things in Singapore? Let's see, the Golden Mile Complex. What is that? So this appears to be an older mall. Or an older store. It still doesn't look that bad. I would say that this would compare to a normal mall here in America. Not bad.
Is that a wet market up top?
What do you mean, where?
Like, go back up to the first picture you showed.
Right here?
Right there.
No, I think that's just...
Oh, no, that's just like sushi or something.
Yeah, I think that's just normal markets. Let's see here. What else do we have that looks neat in Singapore? I'm sure that you probably know a lot more about Singapore than we do because you live there. They have a Chinatown in Singapore? That seems weird. Let's go down there and look at this. What does Chinatown look like in Singapore? Believe it or not, it looks a lot like a Chinatown anywhere else. It just looks like a Chinatown. So that's kind of cool. Let's see here. What else? What else? What the hell is this? Oh, it must be some kind of a cargo dock or something.
OCD shipping port.
Yeah, get the line straight, man. Like, they just brain
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh, man. Let's see here. What else is there? There's this National Museum of Singapore. Let's take a look at it. Nice building. I gotta say, I like the building.
Wow, really good rating, too.
Yeah, really good rate. Let's... Wow, we don't even have to read those. There's 11,000 of them. They're 4.6. We'll just trust it. A Hago light tank. Really neat. Japanese, as a matter of fact. So that must be the World War II exhibit. And they got this mascot outside.
I like it, actually.
And they got this this mock-up ship.
But is it supposed to be the Ark?
No, no, that was like a caravel or something. Let's see. What else? Oh, look, they have home appliances. That's actually pretty cool. I think that's
IKEA.
It honestly, it looks like a Western European kitchen in a way. Let's see what else they got. A rickshaw? Yeah, that's a rickshaw. That's pretty neat. Let's see, what's this here? This must be a meeting of the Communist Party. I don't know. I don't know what that's supposed to be.
Oh.
Let's see here. What an AMX 13. When did they get AMX 13s? That's my question. When in the world did they get those? Interesting. But they're cool. I love the AMX 13. What else do they have? I gotta be honest, the museum doesn't really seem to have a lot in exhibits in it, but it is cool. I like the place. A gramophone. Pretty cool. Pretty neat overall. One more thing in Singapore, and then we'll move on. So, let's see. Trying to look around. Trying to see anything that we... Hall Par Villa. It looks like an amusement park. At least that's what it's listed as. This does not look like an amusement park. I don't know what this is. Maybe it's an amusement park? I don't really know.
It looks like that music's about to start in the background with this picture. Like the horror music.
I don't know. It's kind of weird. It kind of looks like that place we have here in Alabama. I forgot the name of it. But still, I thank you so much for the support. And thank you for being a Lee Spring Army member all the way from Singapore. In the middle of East Asia. Oh, Southeast Asia. And so with that, we are now moving into the live chats. We'll be answering live chats until 1:30 a.m. Eastern Time or 12:30 local time. And so with that, let's get on to the first one.
All right, and of course, first up, we have the Morse code decoders. We have JP's RCs, Mark Hodges, and C. Fay. And that's all I saw for tonight. They said the Morse code says, "Yes, sir. Let's go. Can we get a can we get a yeah?
Can we
Slav
get a-
LSA and Slav Ukraine, Igor."
Can we get a yeah? But still, ding, 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 y'all got it correct. That is the Morse code message. And 2 divisions destroyed. Can I get a yeah? But anyways, we're on to the next one. And thank y'all once again for deciphering that Morse code message each and every night. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one on the list goes to Jason Hubbard, who says, if Russia somehow manages to have Zelensky assassinated, what do you think would be the results? Personally, I think he would become a martyr and rally Ukraine resolve.
I think he would probably become a martyr. That would most likely be the route that he goes, because Ukraine would definitely not give up and surrender then, because they would still want to survive, and there was a lot of people in Ukraine who would want to ensure that the nation survived, so he would probably become a martyr. So with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. Well, not the support, sorry, that was a live chat. I hope we answered that question fairly well, and I think he also would become a martyr. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $15 super chat from Colleen Emsley once again, who says, FYI, still flying helis to cull the wolves and save our caribou herd up here. It's just me, a single mom that raised 4 kids and a cow and calf farm. Lulz. I wish I could show you the ice heaves as they are 12 foot high and have shallow caves.
And thank you so much for the support again, Colleen, and thank you for sharing that with us, that up there at Coaling Lake, you are still a helicopter pilot culling the wolves. So you go, hello, and then they go, oh, hello, and then you blow them away. But still, I thank you so much once again for support and sharing that with us, because it is great to know that you're still the LSA helicopter pilot and that you're up there taking care of all those dastardly wolves doing wolfish things. I've got to say, they are dreadful. They're not sending their best. They're sending their worst. They're sending their aggressive wolves. They're sending their angry wolves. And some, I would say, are good wolves. But a lot of them are terrible. 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 But still, thank you so much once again for support and sharing that with us. And I would love to see those ice heaves one day. That would be really cool to see 12-foot tall blocks of ice. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right. And up next, we have a question from Clayton Nelson, who says, Enforcer, have you been talking much about the buildup of troops in Belarus and Kaliningrad?
I have not been talking about that much because we haven't been able to see visible proof of it ever, and I've never seen it. So I haven't been talking about it much because I don't know if it really exists or not, and I'm leaning more so on the side of it probably doesn't. And so with that, I hope that answers that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Pakatang, who says, did you hear about the new Chinese explosive helmet for pilots, created so their commander can blow the head off of Chinese pilots if they try to defect when in flight? And Pakatang, I did hear about that, but I think it's for ground soldiers as well. And the commander can remotely detonate it, and also the soldier can detonate it themselves if they're captured. But it's definitely, let's just say, not right sounding, to say the least.
It's actually false.
How's that though? I looked it up.
I did a whole bunch of research on it a while ago. There's no actual proof from anywhere that that helmet actually exists. And that anything's happened with it. I haven't found any proof of its true existence. I think there was a YouTube channel that said it, and now everyone cites that YouTube channel as a source, but that YouTube channel had no source or actual evidence for what they were saying. And no one's ever seen them. You know, and they said that supposedly they were being used in Tibet. So if there were any uprisings there, well, not any uprisings. So that way, if they were ever captured by the Tibetans, they blow their head off. But the problem is that there is no real armed uprising in Tibet where they would get captured, where they need their heads to be blown off. You know, they're just kind of existing there. So, you know, as far as I know, it doesn't appear to exist. Let me pull it up. Chinese exploding helmet. So see right here, this video, I think this is the one where it comes from. Let me check. Yeah, China Uncensored. They say the helmets explode, and then you come down here, and where's a source for us to watch on this? Or read? Nowhere.
It looks like you're right. It looks like it's being spread by a bunch of different people, but no root source. So that was incorrect.
Yeah, so... And this is supposedly where it all started, was from China Uncensored. And while they do a pretty good job covering most things, this was just way off the mark because there's no true proof to the exploding helmet. There's no pictures of it. There's nothing of it. We've never seen anything to prove it exists. So, unfortunately, I would comment on it, but they don't exist as far as we know. But I wouldn't doubt that in the future they would, knowing what China is. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
So Pakatang, me and you, we've been had. But anyways, up next we have a question from Bobo Uzala, who says, Enforcer, how do you feel about people that won't leave their home when they might be putting medics and evacuation crews in danger?
I feel it's really, you know, it's tough. It's their choice, and the military is giving them a lot of flexibility to allow them to stay there because they could force everyone out. It is martial law after all. But I feel like they're wanting to give these people a choice. And the medics and first responders and the evacuators also know the risks inherent with doing such a job, and they wouldn't have a job if it wasn't for these people who stayed there until the very last minute. So I would say it just kind of is what it is, an inherent risk of the war. So with that, I hope I addressed that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Jonathan Payne, who says, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, if war breaks out, would either of you join the fight to defend America? And I'll say for me that if a major war broke out, like a world war, I would certainly go and enlist as soon as possible, because it's very important that all people get involved in defending their own countries. And for us, it'd be the United States. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people from other countries that feel the same. But Enforcer, how about you?
I would say yes, but before I even got to that point, I have to let you all know, I don't know if I'd be accepted or not. Technically, the military won't take me right now. The plan was to get in the military, and they wouldn't take me because I have double matrix scoliosis, and that apparently completely disqualifies me from even joining with a waiver. So I would have to see if they would accept me then. So, you know, so that way I don't sit there right now and go, yes, I would join, and then a world war happens, and then I sit there and go, oh, you know, I actually have a medical disability, and then everyone thinks I faked it. I just have double matrix scoliosis. They wouldn't let me join anyways right now. Even if they called me up in selective service, I would most likely get medically disqualified for the scoliosis. But I would still attempt to join. I would try multiple times, at least until they threatened to have me arrested for trying, and then I would stop. But hopefully they will have taken me by that point. So with that, I hope that does address that comment or that question fairly well, because I would go and try and join as soon as possible, as soon as a war broke out, because it's our country. Whether you like it or not, whether you like who's in charge or not, or whatever, it is your country. It's your home. You have to defend it. It's part of your responsibility of being a citizen. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Hoodoo, Texas, who says, Enforcer, isn't the Russian position that they are not at war with Ukraine? If so, in their position, it's not a war crime.
In their position, it flip-flops daily. Sometimes they say they're in a military operation. Other days they say they're at war with not just Ukraine, but the entirety of the West. It really just depends on the day you catch the Russians on. And so it still is a war crime, though. It's a war, whether they want to call it the happy-go-lucky pony fart or the war. It is still a war, and they have to follow the rules of war, considering they're going up against armed combatants from another government and another nation. So with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
The next question goes to Certain Deaf, who says, Enforcer, can satellites detect radar? It's probably a pretty good radar overwatch, all told.
I don't think satellites can pick up radar, because by then, well, I don't really know how they would pick them up. I don't even know how that would work. So I don't think they can, but I might be wrong. So with that, I hope that answers that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And next up, we have a question from James Lynn, who says lots of hints that the UK will send Typhoon multi-role fighters to Ukraine. And what are your thoughts?
I think it would be nice if they did. The Eurofighter Typhoon is as competent of an aircraft as the, I guess you could say, the Gripen in most regards. The F-16 is still in the multi-role capacity better than both. But I think that the Eurofighter is a great option for Ukraine. And so with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Sean Evans Hill, who says, would England supply older jets like the Harrier?
Harrier.
I said that like the governor. The hairdresser.
We're turning into John F. Kennedy. We're going to call him up and ask for the Harrier. We're going to go to Houston. We're going to have a little parade, a little rally. It's going to be fun. It's going to be very nice. We're going to send that furniture back to Jordan Marsh. But moving on from that, I have to tell you that as the President of the United States of America, what was the question?
The question is, would England supply older jets like the Harrier?
Probably not. Takes a lot of training to operate a Harrier, and I wouldn't really think that they would want to undergo the exorbitant amounts of time and effort into organizing themselves and to properly maintaining the Harrier and also getting pilots that could fly the aircraft. So I would have to say no. And so with that, we're on to the next one, but thank you once again for the great question.
And the next one goes to Bee's Nest, who says, do you think there's any truth to the rumor that Turkey has been providing microchips and other electronic tech to the Russians?
I wouldn't really know. I don't think it would be true because right now the Turks and the Russians are having proxy wars going on in Libya and Syria right now, along with everyone else involved in Syria. So I would doubt it, and considering that there's no true proof, that sounds like maybe something that the Russians are trying to put out there to make the Turks, to make the West more hostile to Turkey. So with that, I hope that addresses that, at least off of what we know right now. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
All right. And that viewer is Susan Lowell, who says, would a handful of F-18s end this war? They could eliminate Kerch Bridge East. And Susan is obsessed with the Kerch Bridge. Like, I gotta say, she's always bringing up the Kerch.
I mean, you could. It would be really hard for them to fly close enough to the Kerch Bridge to drop ordnance for it, but technically you could, and maybe the F-18s could do that, but I'm not really sure, so I'd have to say, yeah, maybe. There's a chance. And so with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I thank you all so much once again for watching. If y'all enjoyed, make sure to hit the like button, make sure to subscribe, and always make sure to spread the word of the Lee Spring Army as we run this stream 6 days a week. Every single day of the week at the exact same time of day, except for Mondays. That's the only day we take off, but every other day, y'all can find us right here covering the war. And so with that, thank you all once again for watching. I hope y'all have a great night. Stay safe, take care, and also, Slava Ukraini!
Slava Ukraine!
Yes.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Усміхнеться доля, згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці, запанує браття у своїй сторонці. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького